Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the dragon god of Olympus, the true king of monsters, Naruto x Hera x Hestia, Percy Jackson. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Echoes of Divinity. Blood-red scales gleamed in fractured sunlight. Massive wings unfurled against a sky torn between day and night. Mountains trembled as ancient beings knelt before a throne carved from materials unknown to mortal kind. Rise, children of chaos, commanded a voice both terrible and kind. The balance must be preserved. Naruto Uzumaki woke with a violent start. His body drenched in sweat despite the cool autumn breeze drifting through his open window. The dream, always the same dream, fading like morning mist even as he desperately tried to grasp its details. Something about creatures bowing, about balance, about power. Not chakra, something older. Damn it, he muttered, running fingers through his unruly blonde hair. Third time this week. The small apartment lay silent around him. Pre-dawn shadows stretching across walls covered with photographs from happier times. Team 7 in their youth, the allied shinobi forces after victory, friends celebrating Konoha's reconstruction. Normal memories from his extraordinary but comprehensible life. So why did they suddenly feel incomplete? Naruto slipped from beneath tangled sheets, moving to the window where Konoha spread below. Peaceful in its slumber. 2 years since the Fourth Shinobi War had ended. 2 years of rebuilding, of establishing new alliances, of attempting normalcy. At 19, he'd achieved the recognition he'd always craved. Respected Jonin, war hero, probable future Hokage, yet something unnamed clawed at his consciousness, restless and ancient. Just dreams, he assured himself. Though the whisper lacked conviction. His reflection caught in the glass, blue eyes momentarily flashing with vertical pupils before returning to normal. Naruto blinked, leaning closer to examine his face, but found only familiar features staring back. The first hints of dawn crept over the Hokage monument as he dressed in his standard-issue Jonin uniform. Might as well start the day since sleep had abandoned him again. Perhaps Tsunade would have a mission challenging enough to distract from the echoes plaguing his mind. You look like hell, brat, Tsunade observed, looking up. From mission reports scattered across her desk. Good morning to you too, Granny, Naruto replied, mustering a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Any interesting missions? Preferably something involving punching things. Tsunade's honey-colored eyes narrowed, missing nothing. Still having trouble sleeping, he shrugged, attempting nonchalance. Just restless. Peace is great and all, but I wasn't built for filing reports and diplomatic escorts. She shuffled through papers, extracting a sealed scroll. Interesting timing. This came in yesterday from the border patrol near the Land of Iron. Might be exactly what you need. Naruto accepted the scroll, breaking the seal with practiced ease. As he read, his eyebrows rose incrementally. Energy disturbances, not chakra. He looked up. That's unusual. Precisely why I'm sending you, Tsunade confirmed. Several border guards reported strange phenomena. Lights where none should exist, unusual weather patterns, and most concerning, wildlife behaving abnormally, predators and prey gathering together at specific locations without aggression. Naruto felt an inexplicable chill. Like they're waiting for something. Or someone. Tsunade leaned back, fingers steepled. There's more. One patrol discovered ancient ruins previously unrecorded. Appeared overnight, according to their report, though that seems impossible. What kind of ruins? Unknown origin. Not Five Nations architecture. She hesitated. The symbols reportedly resemble dragons. Something lurched in Naruto's chest. Recognition, anticipation, fear, gone before he could examine it. When do I leave? Immediately. Take Shikamaru and Sai as backup. Tsunade's expression softened marginally. And Naruto, be careful. Something about this feels significant. He grinned, reflexively adjusting his forehead protector. When am I not careful? Her unimpressed stare followed him from the room. The journey north took 3 days of hard travel. Autumn forests gradually yielding to the stark mountains bordering the Land of Iron. The dreams intensified with each passing night, growing more vivid, more insistent. "You're muttering in your sleep," Shikamaru observed on the third morning, watching Naruto with calculating eyes. "Troublesome words, too. Nothing I recognize." Naruto rubbed his face, avoiding his friend's too perceptive gaze. "Just random nonsense, is it?" Sai asked, finishing his breakfast with methodical precision. "You spoke for approximately 17 minutes last night." The language had consistent phonetic C patterns suggestive of actual communication rather than gibberish. "You watched me sleep for 17 minutes? Naruto asked incredulously. "I was on watch. Your behavior was concerning." Sai's expression remained neutral. "The words seemed to cause you distress." Shikamaru sighed, packing away his bedroll. "We're approaching the coordinates. If you're experiencing something relevant to the mission, now's the time to share." Naruto hesitated, uncertain how to articulate the fragmented sensations plaguing him. Dreams of creatures he'd never seen, languages he'd never learned, powers beyond anything the shinobi world had witnessed. How to explain without sounding delusional? "I've been having strange dreams," he finally admitted. "Probably nothing, but they started around the same time these disturbances were reported." Quote. His companions exchanged glances. "Coincidence is rarely coincidence in our line of work," Shikamaru noted. "Especially when it involves you." "Fair point." Naruto stood, adjusting his gear with practiced efficiency. "Let's find these ruins. Maybe seeing them will make some sense of all this." They traveled in silence through increasingly rugged terrain, following coordinates provided by the border patrol. Midday found them cresting a barren ridge overlooking a narrow valley where mist clung unnaturally to the landscape despite the autumn sun. "There." Sai pointed toward a dark opening in the mountainside, nearly hidden by peculiar rock formations. "That's not natural," Shikamaru murmured, eyes narrowing at the too precise arrangements of stone. Naruto didn't respond. Something pulled at him, a magnetic force drawing him forward with undeniable urgency. His feet moved of their own accord, descending the ridge while his companions called warnings behind him. The mist parted as he approached, revealing an entrance framed by stone dragons in attitudes of reverence. Their serpentine bodies curved to form an archway, scaled tails intertwining, jaws open in silent roars. The craftsmanship exceeded anything in the 5 nations, each scale individually rendered, eyes inlaid with gems that caught non-existent light, claws gripping scrolls covered in unfamiliar script. "Naruto, wait." Shikamaru caught up, grabbing his shoulder. "We need to assess potential traps." "There aren't any," Naruto replied with inexplicable certainty. "Not for me." "What does that mean?" Sai asked, brush already poised over a scroll, prepared to create reconnaissance animals. Naruto shook his head, unable to explain knowledge he shouldn't possess. "I just know." He approached the entrance, pulse quickening as he reached toward the weathered stone. His fingertips brushed against a central symbol carved between the dragons, a stylized whirlpool surrounded by 9 tomo. Recognition flared. His clan symbol, but different. Older. Connected to something beyond Uzushio's history. The moment his skin contacted the carving, chakra surged through his system. Not the familiar blue energy, but something golden and ancient that raced along his pathways like liquid fire. Naruto gasped, knees buckling as images flooded his consciousness. A massive creature, dragon, serpent, coiled around the foundations of reality itself. Divine beings arguing in a marble hall, gesturing toward a map of worlds. Monsters kneeling before a throne, pledging fealty to their king. 9 great beasts separating from a greater whole, scattering across dimensions. Naruto. Reality reasserted itself with jarring suddenness. Shikamaru knelt beside him, face tight with concern, while Sai maintained a defensive perimeter, ink beasts prowling the mist. "What happened?" Shikamaru demanded. "You collapsed, then started radiating chakra unlike anything I've ever felt." Naruto blinked, surprised to find himself on the ground. "The entrance, it recognized me." "Impossible," Shikamaru began, then stopped as golden light spilled from the previously dark opening, illuminating symbols that crawled across the stone-like living things. The written language, incomprehensible yet hauntingly familiar, flowed and reformed until resolving into characters Naruto could understand. "The Dragon King returns. The veil thins. Asterisk. Can you read that?" Naruto asked, pointing to the glowing text. Shikamaru frowned. Read what? There's nothing written there. Cold realization settled in Naruto's stomach. The message was for him alone. We need to go inside, he said, rising on unsteady legs. After what just happened? Absolutely not. We should report back in. Shikamaru. Naruto's voice carried uncharacteristic authority. I need to see what's in there. Stay if you want, but I'm going. Something in his tone must have conveyed the futility of argument. Shikamaru sighed, muttering about troublesome blondes, but nodded reluctantly. Fine, but we stay together, and at the first sign of danger beyond your mysterious fainting spell, we retreat. Agreed. Naruto nodded, already moving toward the entrance where golden light pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The interior opened into a vast chamber that defied physical possibility, far larger than the mountain containing it. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into darkness above, while intricately tiled floors depicted cosmic scenes, stars being born, worlds forming, creatures of myth engaged in ancient battles. Centered in the massive space stood a dais supporting a stone pedestal. Atop it rested a single object, a scroll bound with 9 different colored seals. Impossible, Sai whispered, artist's eye cataloging details his mind couldn't reconcile. This architecture predates any recorded civilization. Not just the architecture, Shikamaru added, examining wall carvings with growing confusion. These depict events that never happened, or at least, not in our history. Naruto barely heard them, attention fixed on the scroll. Each step toward it resonated through his body, awakening something that had slumbered for millennia. Recognition, purpose, power, emotions not entirely his own yet fundamentally familiar. The pedestal bore an inscription in the same script that had appeared outside. Now perfectly legible to Naruto's eyes. To reclaim what was divided, blood of the dragon must be willingly given. Asterisk. Instinct guided his hand to a kunai. Before his companions could intervene, Naruto sliced his palm, allowing crimson droplets to fall upon the scroll. Naruto, what the hell? Shikamaru's protest died as the blood touched ancient parchment. The seals ignited, each flaring with distinctive chakra signatures eerily similar to the tailed beasts. The scroll unfurled of its own accord, revealing text written in 9 different hands, 9 different inks, 9 different languages, all suddenly comprehensible. To our once and future king, when awakening begins. Asterisk. Naruto read words describing a being called Ryujin, dragon god, balance keeper, monster king, who had fragmented his consciousness during a primordial war. The text spoke of multiple realms, divine councils, creatures of myth, and powers beyond mortal comprehension. Most disturbingly, it desker. I bet how Ryujin's essence had been hidden in plain sight, disguised as 9 chakra constructs entrusted to the human world. The tailed beasts, fragments of something, someone, far greater. Golden chakra erupted around Naruto, forming a translucent shroud reminiscent of his Kurama mode but fundamentally different, older, more refined, carrying authority beyond mere power. Finally, asterisk, rumbled a voice from within his consciousness. Not Kurama's gruff tones, but something deeper and infinitely more ancient. The seal weakens, memory returns. Naruto staggered, overwhelmed by foreign recall, actions invading his mind. Battles against primordial entities, creation of dimensional barriers, negotiations with pantheons of gods, betrayal by those he'd trusted most. Who? What are you? He managed, dimly aware of Shikamaru and Sai moving protectively closer. You ask yourself who you are. The voice held amusement. Understandable, given the thoroughness of your fragmentation. I am the guardian memory, preserved within the 9th seal to activate upon rediscovery. You are Ryujin, or rather, you will be again, once reunification completes. That's impossible. Naruto's denial lacked conviction. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, shinobi of Konoha, a fragment of identity, created to protect the whole. The shinobi world itself is your creation, a sanctuary dimension crafted during the Great Sundering. The memories you receive now are merely the beginning. The scroll resealed itself, the 9 bindings dissolving into motes of light that sank into Naruto's skin. Knowledge flowed. His consciousness, incomplete but devastating in its implications. His legs gave way, overwhelmed by revelation. Shikamaru caught him, alarmed by golden chakra still pulsing invisible waves. We need to get him out of here, Sai urged. Already creating an ink eagle large enough for transport. No, Naruto managed, fighting through disorientation. Need to finish. He pressed his bleeding palm against the floor. The entire chamber resonated, tiles shifting to reveal a hidden compartment containing a single object, a dagger forged from material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. The Fang of Division, the voice explained, used to separate your essence. Now needed for reunification. Naruto grasped the weapon, its hilt fitting his hand with disturbing perfection. The moment his fingers closed around it, the temple began to shake, not collapsing, but changing. Walls shifted, revealing new passages, while dormant mechanisms activated throughout the structure. We need to leave, Shikamaru insisted. Now. This time, Naruto didn't resist as his friends guided him toward the entrance. The voice continued murmuring explanations of cosmic significance, each revelation more disorienting than the last. By the time they emerged into afternoon sunlight, his mind teetered on the edge of overload. What happened in there? Shikamaru demanded once they'd reached a safe distance. Naruto stared at the dagger in his hand, its impossible material drinking in sunlight. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I'm not who I thought I was. How could? He explained that his entire existence, perhaps the entire shinobi world, might be merely a fragment of something vastly larger. The mission parameters have changed, Sai observed with characteristic understatement. We should return to Konoha immediately. Naruto nodded absently, still processing fragments of alien memory. One certainty emerged from the chaos: these revelations were only beginning. While turmoil unfolded in the shinobi realm, ripples of change reached another world entirely. On Mount Olympus, in chambers rarely visited by younger gods, Hestia knelt before her eternal hearth. Unlike the grandiose fire maintained in the main council hall, this flame burned intimately, personally, connected to every hearth in every home where family gathered. The goddess's form flickered between appearances. Sometimes a young maiden with warm brown eyes, sometimes a matronly woman radiating comfort, occasionally an ancient crone of immeasurable wisdom. All aspects united by gentle strength and unwavering compassion. For millennia, she had tended this fire without interruption. Today, something changed. Golden sparks erupted from previously steady flames, dancing with purpose. All patterns before resolving into a symbol Hestia hadn't seen since before the Titanomachi, a dragon coiled around 9 stars. Impossible, she whispered, forgetting godly dignity in her shock. You were divided beyond recovery. The fire flared in response, projecting images of a blonde young man discovering ancient truths, awakening powers long forgotten. Understanding dawned across Hestia's ageless features. The fragmentation is reversing. You're returning. Implications cascaded through her mind. Political, cosmic, personal. The Pantheon's carefully maintained hierarchy would face unprecedented disruption. Zeus would perceive threat where perhaps none existed. Younger gods wouldn't understand the significance of what preceded their existence. And the monsters. Hestia rose gracefully, decision made. This required immediate attention, but also discretion. Not all Olympians would welcome this development. Her flame would guide her to this awakening presence, this returning god, whose authority once balanced chaos and order across all mythological realms. While Hestia communed with her hearth, another goddess faced unexpected developments in her own domain. Hera, queen of Olympus, stood with perfect posture despite simmering rage as her attendants delivered increasingly disturbing reports. Her beauty remained flawless even in anger, dark hair arranged in an elaborate crown. White chitin flowing around her statuesque form, eyes reflecting the peacock feathers adorning her raiment. Repeat yourself, she commanded the trembling dryad. Precisely what did the hellhound say? Am my queen. The nature spirit stammered. It refused to pursue the demigod as ordered, claiming loyalty to the true king, and that old oaths precede new ones. When Lord Dionysus attempted compulsion, all nearby monsters displayed similar defiance before retreating to the wilderness. Hera dismissed the messenger with a gesture, turning to the window overlooking Olympus's perfect gardens. Troubling. Monsters occasionally rejected individual orders but never questioned divine authority itself. This suggested something fundamental shifting within mythological power structures. The true king, she mused aloud. Not my husband, clearly, else they would have said Zeus. Ancient knowledge stirred. Lessons taught by her mother Rhea, stories predating the Olympians. Monsters existed before gods, or at least before current gods. They served something. Someone, in primordial times. Hera's thoughts were interrupted by the chamber doors bursting open, admitting her husband in characteristic dramatic fashion. Zeus's imposing figure crackled with barely contained lightning, beard bristling with indignation. "Have you heard?" he demanded without preamble. "Creatures refusing commands, spouting nonsense about forgotten kings." "I was just informed," Hera replied coolly, maintaining composure despite his disrespect. Millennia of his infidelities had perfected her mask of regal indifference. Poseidon reports similar incidents undersea. Marine monsters abandoning territories, gathering at specific oceanic trenches. Zeus paced, lightning arcing between his fingers. Even the Cyclops seem affected. Speaking of ancient contracts being reactivated, something in his tone caught Hera's attention, not merely anger, but apprehension. Almost fear. "You know something," she realized, studying her husband's expression. "Something you've kept from the council." Zeus scowled. "Baseless accusation. 3,000 years of marriage makes your tells rather obvious, husband." Hera crossed perfect arms. What ancient power concerns even the king of Olympus? Thunder rumbled outside despite clear skies. Zeus glared, then visibly composed himself. Merely rumors and fragments of pre-Titanomachy myths. He dismissed. "Nothing worth discussion until we have facts. I'm calling an emergency council. Your presence is required." He departed in a crack of displaced air, leaving Hera contemplative. Zeus's deflection confirmed her suspicions. He recognized these signs and found them threatening. Her marriage might be loveless, but Hera's commitment to Olympus itself remained absolute. If something threatened the divine order, she needed information independent of her husband's filtered revelations. Decision made, she summoned her personal messenger. "Find Athena. Discreetly. Tell her I require access to the oldest sections of her library, specifically, texts regarding primordial monster sovereignty." The attendant bowed and departed, leaving Hera contemplative. After millennia of static hierarchy, change approached, change her husband clearly feared. Perhaps, she mused with uncharacteristic anticipation, that made it worth exploring. Thousands of miles from Olympus. In a nondescript motel room outside Lubbock, Texas, a teenage girl jolted awake, breathing heavily. Sweat plastered dark hair to her forehead as she fumbled for the lamp, Monotone sparse accommodations, standard issue for young demigods on the run. Maps covered one wall, marked with monster sightings and safe houses. Weapons occupied another. Celestial bronze daggers, a silver bow, emergency ambrosia rations. The girl, 16, athletic, with startling gray eyes, shook off lingering disorientation and reached for a leather-bound journal. She recorded her dream with practiced efficiency. Dragon symbol appearing worldwide. Ancient temple emerging from dimensional barrier. Blonde young man with whisker markings and vertical pupil eyes commanding monsters with authority exceeding the gods. 9 energy signatures reunifying into something older than Olympus itself. The title, Ryujin spoken with reverence by creatures that never show reverence. Asterisk. Beneath this, she added a final observation. The monsters weren't attacking him. They were welcoming him home. Asterisk. Annabeth Chase closed her journal, mind racing through implications. As a daughter of Athena and veteran of 2 divine wars, she recognized paradigm-shifting events when they appeared. Something ancient was awakening. Something connected to Percy's recent discovery of monsters gathering at specific points nationwide. Coordinating in ways they never had before. She reached for her secure cell phone, hesitating only briefly before dialing. Percy answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "Nabeth, it's like 3 in the morning. The monster migrations you've been tracking." She began without preamble. "I know what they're responding to. We need to contact camp immediately." A pause, then sounds of movement as Percy fully awakened. "Another prophecy. Worse," Annabeth replied grimly. "I think the gods may not be the most powerful beings in play anymore." Back in Konoha, Tsunade stared at the mission report with growing concern. Shikamaru's clinical description detailed Naruto's unusual reaction to the temple, while Sai's accompanying sketches depicted architecture unlike anything in shinobi records. Most troubling was Naruto himself, uncharacteristically quiet since their return, carrying an ancient weapon that resisted y'all attempts at analysis. Your Cer. Toin, this dagger can't be separated from him? She asked, eyeing the black blade sheathed at Naruto's hip. It returns to my hand, he demonstrated, setting it on her desk only for the weapon to dissolve into shadow and reform at his side. And before you ask, no, I can't explain it. And these memories you're experiencing. Naruto's expression tightened. Fragments. Nothing coherent yet. Just enough to know they're not mine, except they are. Tsunade sighed, reaching for her sake. Mysterious temples, ancient weapons, identity crises, all involving her most unpredictable shinobi. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. I'm restricting you to village boundaries until we understand what's happening, she decided. And you'll report to medical daily for monitoring. Surprisingly, Naruto didn't protest. There's something else, something I need to check personally. Which is, Kurama's been silent since the temple. Completely silent. Genuine worry creased his features. I need to enter my mindscape and find out why. Tsunade considered this. The Nine Tails had become an ally rather than a burden. Its silence was indeed concerning. Fine. Supervised meditation only, with Yamanaka support. Her expression softened marginally. Naruto, whatever's happening, we'll face it together. That's what Konoha does. He nodded, attempted a smile that didn't quite materialize, and departed with uncharacteristic quietness. Tsunade turned to the window, gazing toward horizons beyond the village walls. Intuition built over decades warned that Naruto's discovery transcended typical shinobi concerns. Something foundational was shifting, something with implications beyond their world's understanding. What have you stumbled into now, brat? She murmured to the empty office. Outside, storm clouds gathered against prevailing weather patterns, while reports arrived of unusual animal behavior throughout Fire Country. Predators and prey gathered in peculiar formations, all facing the same direction. All facing Konoha. Meditation proved difficult with fragmented memories intruding upon concentration. Naruto sat cross-legged in a specially prepared chamber, Inoichi Yamanaka monitoring nearby. While he attempted to access his internal landscape, after an hour of frustration, the familiar pull finally came. Consciousness shifted inward, depositing him within his mindscape, but not as he remembered it. Gone were the flooded corridors and cage that had defined Kurama's prison. Instead, he stood in a vast celestial space where worlds hung like ornaments against infinite darkness. 9 distinct realms connected by threads of golden energy, each containing familiar elements. Shinobi lands, Olympian territories, and others he somehow recognized despite never having visited. Kurama, Naruto called, voice echoing across impossible distances. Here, but not as you remember. Came the reply from everywhere and nowhere. Light coalesced, forming not the fox he expected but a dragon of immense proportions, red-scaled, 9-tailed, with Kurama's familiar eyes set in an unfamiliar face. What happened to you? Nothing happened to me, the dragon replied. Rather, I am remembering what I am. As are the others. 8 more lights appeared, each resolving into draconic forms bearing distinctive characteristics of the tailed beasts, Shukaku's markings on sandy scales, Matabi's blue-black flames, and so forth. We were never mere chakra constructs, the Kurama dragon explained. We are aspects of Ryujin, of you, divided and seal. To preserve the whole when destruction threatened all realms. Naruto struggled to process implications that rewrote everything he understood about his world. You're saying the tailed beasts are actually parts of some ancient dragon god, and somehow I'm, what? His reincarnation, not reincarnation, continuation. The massive head lowered to Naruto's level. The process that Naruto Uzumaki, was designed to allow gradual reintegration when the time came. Your human experiences, connections, growth, all essential to tempering what comes next. Which is, reunification. Return, reclamation of your role as balance keeper between realms that have fallen into dangerous disorder during your absence. The other dragon beasts moved closer, their energies resonating with Naruto's own. The shinobi world exists within a pocket dimension you created, ****, Shukaku's aspect explained. A sanctuary during cosmic war, protected by the fragmentation of your essence into what became the tailed beasts. The barrier between dimensions weakens, ****, added Matabi. Worlds once separate bleed together. Ancient enemies sense opportunity in the chaos. Naruto shook his head, overwhelmed. This can't be right. I'm just just Naruto. You are both less and more than you understand, ****, Gyuki's aspect responded. The memories will return gradual. Why to prevent damage to your consciousness? But time grows short. Time for what? For the dragon god's return, ****, Kurama answered solemnly. For Ryujin to reclaim his throne before ancient Nemes destroy everything he sacrificed to protect. The mindscape began dissolving, conversation concluding as Naruto's meditation ended. The last thing he heard was Kurama's rumbling promise. We will guide you through what comes next, Kit. Both worlds need what you will become. Naruto opened his eyes to find Inoichi staring with unconcealed concern. Your chakra signature fluctuated dramatically. The Yamanaka reported, and manifested visual phenomena I've never encountered. Visual phenomena, your shadow. Inoichi gestured behind Naruto. Look. Naruto turned. His ordinary human shadow stretched normally across the floor, except for 9 draconic heads extending from its edges, each moving independently before fading from sight. Outside, thunder cracked across previously clear skies as dimensions separated for millennia began the process of reconnection. In the land of iron, the discovered temple activated fully, sending pulses of energy across the shinobi world and beyond. Elsewhere, in a realm of gods and monsters, ancient powers stirred in response, some with anticipation, others with dread. The dragon god was awakening. The king of monsters would soon reclaim his throne. And nothing in any world would remain unchanged. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Crossroads of Fate. Dawn illuminated the Hokage's office in hues of amber and gold as Tsunade stood the ancient dagger on her desk with narrowed eyes. The weapon defied analysis, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, resisting all attempts at chakra scanning, and consistently returning to Naruto regardless of distance or barriers. Remarkable, Kakashi murmured, Sharingan exposed and focused on the blade. It exists simultaneously in multiple chakra spectrums. I can see it, but I can't comprehend it. Naruto stood by the window, gaze distant, consciousness divided between the conversation and the increasingly coherent memories surfacing in his mind. 3 days had passed since the temple incident, each hour bringing new fragments of a life he couldn't reconcile with his existence as Naruto Uzumaki. The tailed beasts were never what we thought, he said abruptly, interrupting Tsunade's examination. They're fragments of something older. Something I used to be. Silence settled as Kakashi and Tsunade exchanged concerned glances. Perhaps you should start from the beginning, Kakashi suggested, covering his Sharingan. Everything you've learned since entering that temple. Naruto turned, features momentarily illuminated by sunlight in a way that emphasized subtle changes, sharper canines, more pronounced whisker marks, and fleeting vertical pupils that reverted to normal between blinks. That's just it, he replied with uncharacteristic solemnity. I don't know the beginning. Only pieces. Fragments of memory from before the shinobi world even existed. Tsunade leaned forward, professional curiosity overriding administrative concerns. Tell us what you do know. No matter how implausible it seems. Naruto inhaled deeply, organizing thoughts that refused conventional structure. According to Kurama, who isn't exactly Kurama anymore, our entire world exists inside a pocket dimension. Created as a sanctuary during some ancient cosmic war. The 9-tailed beasts are actually aspects of a being called Ryujin, the dragon god, who fragmented his consciousness to prevent something catastrophic. He gestured helplessly. And somehow, I'm not just Naruto Uzumaki. I'm this Ryujin person, or will be once the reunification completes. Rather than skepticism, his declaration met thoughtful consideration. In a world where teenagers wielded the power to level mountains and the dead routinely returned to life, conceptual flexibility came naturally to experienced shinobi. That would explain certain inconsistencies in our historical records, Kakashi mused. The sudden appearance of chakra during the Sage of Six Paths era has always lacked satisfactory explanation. And the dagger? Tsunade prompted, indicating the object that had returned to Naruto's hip despite being placed on her desk moments before. The Fang of Division, Naruto supplied. The name emerging from recovered memory. Used to separate Ryujin's essence originally. Now needed for reintegration. He unsheathed the weapon, its impossible material drinking in light from the room. Symbols etched along the blade shifted continuously, never settling into recognizable patterns yet somehow conveying meaning to Naruto alone. There's a hidden scroll, he continued, in the archives beneath the Hokage monument. Behind the memorial to the first Hokage. It contains information about the dragon sage who supposedly created our world. Tsunade's eyebrows rose incrementally. And you know this how? I remember putting it there. Naruto frowned at the contradiction between statement and memory. Except that's impossible because of never. Perhaps we should retrieve this scroll. Kakashi interrupted gently, before theorizing further. The archive beneath the monument housed Konoha's most sensitive documents, mission reports too classified for the regular intelligence department. Forbidden techniques deemed too dangerous for the main library, and historical records containing uncomfortable truths about the village's founding. Kakashi navigated labyrinthine shelves with practiced ease, leading them to an alcove dedicated to the first Hokage. A stone relief depicted Hashirama Senju creating the village through his unique wood release ability. There's nothing behind this, Tsunade stated, examining the seamless wall. I've been down here hundreds of times. Naruto approached without hesitation, golden chakra manifesting around his hand as he pressed it against the stone. There is for me. Ancient seals flared to life beneath his touch, seals invisible to normal perception. The wall dissolved, revealing a small chamber containing a La scroll resting on a pedestal carved from wood fossilized to crystal. Impossible, Tsunade whispered, recognizing the crystallization pattern. That's my grandfather's chakra, but enhanced and preserved by something else. Kakashi observed, eye narrowing at faint draconic motifs embedded in the crystal. Naruto lifted the scroll, breaking seals that should have incinerated any unauthorized handler. Ancient parchment unfurled, revealing text in multiple scripts, some recognizable as archaic forms of modern shinobi writing, others completely alien yet somehow comprehensible to him. The Chronicle of Sanctuary, he translated aloud, written by the Sage of Six Paths, with additions by the first Hokage. He began reading, voice gradually shifting to accommodate the formal, archaic language. I, who was called Hagoromo Otsutsuki in this life, record here the truth of our world's creation, knowledge entrusted to me as guardian of the sanctuary dimension created by the divine dragon during the sundering of realms. Our world exists as a protected enclave, separated from the greater cosmos where gods and primordials wage war beyond mortal comprehension. Asterisk. The being known as the Ten Tails was never a simple creature of destruction, but rather a fragmented aspect of divinity, the dragon god's power separated into components and sealed to maintain the dimensional barriers protecting our realm. The chakra gifted to humanity derives from this divine essence, modified to be compatible with mortal bodies. Asterisk. My mother Kagaya did not discover the god tree by chance, she was guided to it as part of a greater design. The fruit she consumed contained concentrated divine essence, beginning a process intended to eventually restore connections between realms when the time proved right. Naruto paused as subsequent text shifted to a different hand. I, Hashirama Senju, continue this chronicle as was foretold. The first Hokage title is more than village leadership, it rise the sacred duty of maintaining the sanctuary. The forests I create serve as anchor points for dimensional stability, their roots extending beyond physical reality. Asterisk. The 9 great beasts must remain dispersed, as their reunification would begin collapse of the barriers between worlds. While this may someday prove necessary when the dragon god awakens to restore cosmic balance, such awakening carries tremendous risk to both our realm and others. Asterisk. The signs of awakening will be unmistakable. Creatures acting against natural instinct, weather patterns defying natural law, and the rants of architecture not built by human hands. When these signs manifest, the bearer of the 9 must seek the temple of convergence where truth awaits. The scroll continued with increasingly specific instructions. including coordinates for sacred sites throughout the shinobi world and rituals designed to either strengthen or weaken dimensional barriers. This is, Tsunade struggled to articulate the paradigm shift these revelations represented. Troubling, Kakashi supplied, expression grave behind his mask. If our world is merely a protected pocket dimension, what exists beyond its boundaries? And what happens if those boundaries fail? Naruto rolled the scroll closed with deliberate care. I need to go to Mount Myoboku. The great Toad Sage might have answers about all this. I'll arrange an escort, Tsunade began. No, Naruto interrupted firmly. This journey needs to happen immediately, and I need to travel alone. The reverse summoning technique will get me there faster than any conventional travel. Something in his tone, a quiet authority unlike his usual brashness, forestalled argument. Tsunade studied him with medical scrutiny, noting the increasingly pronounced changes in his bearing and physiological markers. Very well, she conceded. But you maintain communication through the toads. Regular updates, Naruto. We're navigating completely unknown territory here. He nodded, grateful for her trust despite the bizarre circumstances. As he formed the hand signs for summoning, a thought occurred that wasn't entirely his own. The boundaries between worlds were already thinning. His journey to Mount Myoboku might be the first of many dimensional transitions. The reverse summoning deposited Naruto in the familiar mushroom forests of Mount Myoboku, home of the Toad Sages and contract-bound allies to Konoha for generations. Ordinarily, the peaceful ambiance and distinctive flora would have comforted him, a second home where he'd mastered sage techniques under Fukasaku's tutelage. Today, something felt fundamentally different. Toad sentries spotted him immediately but remained at unusual distance, expressions caught between reverence and apprehension. When Gamakichi approached, the typically casual Toad maintained formal posture, eyes downcast. The great sage awaits, Lord Naruto, he announced with unprecedented deference. He has been expecting your arrival. Naruto frowned at the uncharacteristic behavior. Gamakichi, it's just me. Drop the Lord stuff. The massive Toad shifted uncomfortably. Forgiveness, but you're not just you anymore, are you? We can sense the change. All Mount Myoboku can sense it. What change? Gamakichi gestured to a nearby pond, inviting Naruto to observe his reflection. The image rippling across the water's surface showed his familiar features overlaid with something else, a translucent draconic visage that appeared and disappeared between heartbeats. The Ancient One returns, Gamakichi said quietly. The Toads remember our original covenant, from before the sundering of realms. Naruto stared at his distorted reflection, unsettled by visual confirmation of his internal transformation. I need answers, Gamakichi. Real answers, not more cryptic hints. Then let us not delay. The great sage has prepared for this day throughout his long lifetime. They traveled in uncomfortable silence through the mushroom forest, numerous toads pausing in daily activities to bow as Naruto passed. The deference disturbed him more than any overt hostility might have, acknowledgement of something he hadn't earned. Recognition of someone he wasn't. Not yet, anyway. The great Toad Sage resided in a massive hollowed mushroom near the summit of the sacred mountain. Ancient even by Toad standards. The massive amphibian had witnessed the founding of the shinobi villages, guided generations of summoners, and presumably napped through several significant historical events. Today, however, the ancient sage was fully alert. Roomy eyes focused with unusual clarity as Naruto entered his chamber. The convergence begins, he announced without preamble, voice rumbling through the cavernous space. The veil thins between sanctuary and the outer realms. Naruto approached respectfully but directly. I need to understand what's happening to me. What I'm becoming. The massive toad nodded ponderous acknowledgement. You seek truth about Ryujin, whose essence stirs within you. About the sanctuary dimension and its purpose. About the worlds beyond our boundaries. You knew all along, didn't you? About the tailed beasts being fragments of something else. About our world being some sort of pocket dimension. Not merely a pocket dimension, the sage corrected. A sanctuary created during the Divine War, when powers beyond mortal comprehension threatened all existence. Ryujin, the dragon god, balance keeper between order and chaos, created this realm as haven for those caught in cosmic crossfire. The ancient toad shifted, retrieving a scroll so old its edges crumbled despite careful handling. The Toad contract predates the shinobi villages by millennia. Our original covenant was with Ryujin himself. Before his fragmentation, he unfurled the document, revealing signatures in chronological order, familiar names like Jiraiya and Minato preceded by generations of summoners. At the very beginning, barely legible through age deterioration, a single symbol rather than a name, the same dragon motif Naruto had seen in the temple. The Toads were entrusted with preserving knowledge between cycles. The sage continued, when Ryujin divided his essence to maintain dimensional barriers, we were charged with recognizing him upon eventual return. But why? Naruto pressed. Why create this elaborate sanctuary? Why fragment into the tailed beasts? Why arrange for me to be whatever I'm becoming? The ancient sage's expression turned grave. Because the alternative was total annihilation. The divine war between primordial powers, beings your limited language calls gods, threatened existence itself. Some sought absolute order, others embraced complete chaos. Ryujin maintained balance between these extremes until betrayal forced desperate measures. Massive webbed fingers traced patterns in the air, conjuring illusions of cosmic battles, dragons and serpents wrestling amid nascent stars. Humanoid figures wielding impossible weapons, mountains rising and falling like waves during conflicts that reshapes reality itself. Ryujin could not be destroyed, so high. Essence was divided. 9 primary aspects sealed into forms that would eventually become the tailed beasts. The sanctuary dimension provided both protection for innocent lives and a controlled environment for eventual reintegration. And I'm, what? His reincarnation? No. The sage's massive head shook slowly. You are Ryujin himself, experiencing gradual awakening through mortal form. Your human life, your experiences, connections, growth as Naruto Uzumaki, was designed to temper divine perspective with mortal understanding before full reintegration. The implications staggered Naruto, his entire existence, his struggles, friendships, achievements, failures, planned as preparation for becoming something beyond human comprehension. That can't be right, he protested. My parents, my friends, my life in Konoha, that's all real. That's who I am. Yes, the ancient toad agreed with unexpected gentleness. Those connections are genuine, those experiences authentic. The plan was naive, to erase Naruto Uzumaki but to integrate his perspective with recovered divine consciousness. You will become neither fully human nor purely divine, but something unprecedented, a bridge between realms. Naruto paced the chamber, processing revelations that rewrote his understanding of existence itself. The scroll mentioned other realms beyond ours. What are they? Many worlds exist in the greater cosmos, some parallel to our own. Others fundamentally different. The realm most directly connected to ours, the one from which Ryujin originally came, is what humans there call the world of Greek mythology. Though its true nature exceeds such simplistic categorization. Greek mythology, Naruto repeated skeptically. You mean like Zeus and Hercules and the Minotaur? Those are just stories, as shinobi would be, just stories, to inhabitants of other dimensions, the sage countered. Reality exceeds human comprehension, requiring simplification through narrative. The beings called gods in that realm are simply entities whose existence operates on different principles than mortal life. The ancient toad's expression grew troubled. The barriers between dimensions weaken. Already, creatures from their world breach our boundaries, while chakra phenomena manifest in theirs. The sanctuary can no longer remain isolated. What happens next? Naruto asked, though something within him already anticipated the answer. Convergence, the sage intoned solemnly. As dimensional boundaries dissolve, realms separated for millennia will reconnect. Entities from all worlds will respond, according to their nature, some seeking alliance, others conquest, many simply struggling to comprehend changing cosmic reality. And my role in all this? To complete the awakening, to reintegrate what was divided, to restore balance between realms as only Ryujin can. The massive toad leaned forward, ancient eyes boring into Naruto's. But beware, not all welcome the dragon god's return. NT enemies stir in response to your awakening, while allies long forgotten recognize signs of your return. Naruto absorbed this, mind racing with implications beyond his current comprehension. 1p. Practical question emerged from the theoretical maelstrom. How do I cross between realms? If dimensional barriers are weakening, can I? The fang of division becomes the key of convergence, the sage interrupted. The weapon that once separated can now connect. Focus your intention through the blade at locations where dimensional barriers thin naturally. Naruto touched the dagger at his hip, feeling it pulse in response. And how do I recognize these thin spots? They manifest differently across realms. In our world, ancient temples like the one you discovered serve as anchor points. In the Olympian world, places of significant mythological importance, Mount Olympus itself, the entrance to the underworld, the original Mount Othras where Titans once ruled. The great sage shifted forward, expression grave. Proceed with caution, young Ryujin. The Olympians maintain rigid hierarchy, perceiving any unaffiliated power as potential threat. Your return disrupts carefully maintained cosmic order. Fantastic, Naruto muttered, momentarily reverting to his typical sardonic humor. So I'm supposed to navigate god politics while figuring out who I really am and preventing dimensional collapse. Anything else I should know? Quote, the ancient toad's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Only that you will not face these challenges alone. Old allies stir in response to your awakening, not all of them gods. Naruto nodded, mind already processing tactical approaches to these revelations. I need to inform Konoha about the dimensional situation. If creatures from other realms are crossing over, your Hokage should prepare, the sage agreed. But remember, diplomacy may prove as valuable as combat in the coming convergence. Many entities entering our world seek guidance rather than conquest. With formal farewells exchanged, Naruto departed the ancient chamber, determination settling alongside confusion. Before returning to Konoha, however, one location demanded investigation. The Valley of the End, where Naruto had fought Sasuke multiple times throughout their complicated history, marked the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Sound. Massive stat. UES of Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha faced each other across the waterfall, commemorating their legendary battle. According to the great sage, this location represented one of the thinnest bounda. Rise between dimensions in the shinobi world, not by coincidence but by design. Hashirama had deliberately selected this place for his confrontation with Madara, knowing the clash of their immense chakra would anchor dimensional boundaries. Naruto stood atop Hashirama's stone head, surveying the valley with newly sensitive perception. Beneath conventional reality, he detected subtle distortions, places where physical laws bent slightly. Where chakra flowed in impossible patterns, where something beyond normal sensory perception pulsed with otherworldly energy. So it's true, he murmured, unsheathing the fang of division. The dagger resonated in his grip, responding to proximity with interdimensional weakness. Symbols along its blade rearranged themselves, forming instructions rather than mere decoration, a complex sequence combining elements of fuinjutsu with something older and more fundamental. Following instinctual guidance, Naruto channeled chakra through the weapon while tracing specific patterns in the air. Golden energy lingered, forming luminous symbols that hung suspended before slowly rotating around a central axis. Reality rippled, distorted, then parted like curtains to reveal, elsewhere. Through the opening hung a landscape simultaneously familiar and alien, rolling hills leading toward a distant mountain that radiated power unlike anything in the shinobi world. The vegetation seemed similar to Fire Country's forests, yet subtly different in coloration and arrangement. Most strikingly, the quality of light itself differed, somehow more substantial, as illumination carried greater metaphysical weight. Naruto stood transfixed before this window between worlds, simultaneously terrified and enthralled by confirmation of everything he'd learned. Anyo. Their dimension existed beyond their own, another reality where different rules applied, different powers held sway, different histories unfolded. The world of Olympian gods and mythological monsters lay just beyond this threshold. Separated by barriers growing thinner each passing day. Before he could consider crossing through, movement caught his attention, a silver-clad figure sprinting through distant woods with impossible speed. Pursuing something just beyond Naruto's field of vision. The fleeting glimpse lasted mere seconds before the figure disappeared into forest shadows, but something about their presence registered with unexpected familiarity. The dimensional window collapsed before Naruto could investigate further, the dagger seemingly unable to maintain the connection longer without further action. The experience left him momentarily drained but convinced of the great sage's warnings. Convergence had begun. Preparation could not wait. While Naruto investigated dimensional boundaries in the shinobi world, significant developments unfolded across the cosmos in the realm of Olympus. Deep within virgin forests sacred to Artemis, the goddess of the hunt moved with preternatural silence. Tracking disturbances reported by her nymphs. Silver bow materialized in her grasp as she detected movement ahead, something large crashing through underbrush with uncharacteristic clumsiness. Artemis maintained her preferred form for hunting, a young woman in her late teens, athletic and graceful, with auburn hair gathered in a practical braid. Silver eyes narrowed as she nocked an arrow, prepared to eliminate whatever creature violated her sanctuary. The massive hellhound that burst into the clearing was not unexpected. Reports of monster incursions had increased tenfold in recent weeks, with creatures behaving erratically throughout divine territories. What gave the goddess pause was the hellhound's condition, wounded not by celestial bronze or divine power, but by strange energy that crackled blue-white across its shadowy fur. More surprising was its behavior. Rather than attacking or retreating, the creature spotted her and whined pitifully, approaching in supplication. "What madness is this?" Artemis murmured, arrow trained on the monster's head while it crouched submissively before her. "Lady Artemis," the hellhound spoke, "another impossibility, as these creatures possessed animal intelligence at best. Message for Olympus. The barrier's thin. The king returns. Ancient covenants activate." "What king?" she demanded, divine authority compelling answer. The creature shuddered, torn between compulsions. "The Dragon King. The Balance Keeper. The true Lord of Monsters." Before Artemis could extract further information, the hellhound convulsed violently. Blue-white energy, somehow recognizable as foreign to their reality, consumed the creature from within, reducing it to particles that scattered on forest winds. Troubled by this encounter, Artemis summoned her lieutenant. The immortal hunter materialized from forest shadows, bow ready, expecting combat. "My lady," Talia Grace inquired, electric blue eyes scanning for threats. "Return to camp. Prepare the hunters for potential conflict, but maintain distance from any monsters encountered. Record behavior rather than engaging unless absolutely necessary." "Something's wrong with the monsters," Talia observed, not phrasing it as a question. "Something changes," Artemis corrected. "I must report to Olympus immediately. Zeus summoned Apollo and myself specifically, presumably others have encountered similar phenomena." The lieutenant nodded, disappearing into the woods to execute orders while Artemis prepared for divine transportation. Before dissolving into silver light, she cast one final glance toward the location where the hellhound had disintegrated. Foreign energy, creatures behaving against their nature, references to forgotten royalty, all signs pointing to fundamental disruption in the cosmic order. The emergency council convened amid unusual tension. 12 massive thrones arranged in U formation housed the major Olympians, while minor gods and releva immortals gathered in attendant positions. Zeus occupied the central throne, expression thunderous even by his standards, while gods filed in with varying degrees of concern and curiosity. Hera served proceedings with outward calm belying internal alertness. Her investigation had yielded fragmentary but troubling information, ancient records mentioning a divine entity predating both Olympians and Titans, whose domain included sovereignty over creatures now classified as monsters. Artemis and Apollo arrived simultaneously, the twins taking their respective thrones while wordlessly communicating shared concern. Their father wasted no time once quorum assembled. "Disturbances spread throughout our territories," Zeus announced, lightning crackling between his fingers. "Monsters rejecting divine authority, unexplained energy manifestations, and reports of dimensional anomalies require immediate attention." Murmurs rippled through the assembly as gods compared observations. Hera Ted with interest that several seemed unsurprised by these developments, particularly Poseidon, whose expression suggested foreknowledge rather than confusion. More intriguing was Hestia's deliberate neutrality. The eldest Olympian rarely attended full councils, preferring her hearth to politics. Today she sat quietly beside her sacred flame, observing proceedings with ancient eyes that missed nothing. My hunters report unprecedented monster behavior, Artemis confirmed. Creatures refusing commands, speaking of ancient contracts and a returning king. Similar disruptions affect the seas, Poseidon added reluctantly. Marine monsters abandoning territories to gather at specific oceanic trenches, particularly the Challenger Deep. The underworld experiences similar phenomena, Hades contributed from his guest throne. Expression dour as always. Spirits speak of cosmic realignment, while Tartarus itself shows disturbing activity. Zeus's scowl deepened with each report. Apollo. W. Had do your oracles reveal about these events? The sun god shifted uncomfortably. Unclear visions, references to a power that predates our reign, and bridges divided realms. The Pythia speaks in circles, describing the return of one who was 9 who was 1. Hera watched her husband carefully, noting how his knuckles whitened around his master bolt. Not mere anger, but apprehension, perhaps even fear. Zeus feared very little in the cosmos. Whatever caused such reaction warranted careful attention. We face potential incursion from forces beyond our normal experience, Zeus declared. I've detected energy signatures unlike anything in our realm. Not divine, not monstrous, not mortal. Something else entirely. Perhaps we should consult older sources, Hera suggested smoothly. The Titaness Rhea might possess knowledge from before our ascension. Zeus's expression darkened at the mention of his mother. Unnecessary. I propose immediate action rather than academic investigation. Apollo and Artemis will track these dimensional disturbances to their source. Athena will analyze energy signatures for weaknesses. Ares will prepare defensive positions should hostile forces emerge. Poseidon cleared his throat meaningfully. Brother, if these events connect to pre-Olympian history, perhaps caution exceeds haste. Attacking unknown entities without understanding their nature or intentions risks escalation. I concur, Hades added unexpectedly. Something fundamental shifts in cosmic underpinnings. Tartarus itself responds as though to familiar authority. Zeus bristled this united opposition from his brothers. You suggest we allow potential invasion without response. I suggest, Poseidon replied carefully, that we investigate thoroughly before potentially agonizing a power that predates our reign and commands instinctive loyalty from creatures bound to our authority. The council chamber fell silent as implications settled. Few things could override divine command of monsters, and fewer still would inspire Poseidon to openly advocate restraint. Divided response serves none, Hestia spoke suddenly, drawing all attention. The eldest Olympian rarely contributed to strategic discussions, making her intervention significant. I propose compromise. Investigation proceeds alongside preparation, but no offensive action without full council approval. Her reasonable suggestion diffused immediate tension while acknowledging legitimate concerns from all factions. Zeus reluctantly nodded agreement, unwilling to directly oppose his eldest sister's wisdom. Very well. Apollo and Artemis will lead investigation. Athena coordinates intelligence. Defensive preparations advance but remain uncommitted. Zeus fixed the assembly with stern glare. But make no mistake. Olympus will not cede authority to forgotten powers, regardless of their origin or history. We rule this cosmos now. Thunder punctuated his declaration as the council adjourned, gods departing to execute assigned tasks. Hera remained seated, observing interaction patterns with practiced political acumen. Interesting alliances formed through subtle glances and brief exchanges. Poseidon and Hades communicated silent understanding. Athena departed with thoughtful calculation rather than dutiful acceptance. Most telling, Hestia made deliberate eye contact with Hera herself before vanishing in a subtle flare of hearth flames. An invitation, or perhaps acknowledgement of shared suspicion. Either way, Hera intended to pursue this connection discreetly. If Hestia possessed information about these developments, it likely exceeded anything available through conventional investigation. As immortals filtered from the chamber, Hera approached Zeus with carefully modulated concern. Husband, your reaction suggests familiarity with whatever approaches. What aren't you sharing with the council? Lightning flickered in his eyes, warning against pushing too forcefully. Speculation without evidence serves no purpose. These disturbances likely represent minor cosmic adjustments rather than significant threat. Yet you mobilize multiple Olympians in response to minor adjustments, she observed. Curious prioritization. Zeus's expression hardened momentarily before softening into practiced diplomatic charm. Merely precautionary, my queen. The cosmos regularly experiences such fluctuations. I simply ensure our realm remains unaffected. The practiced lie confirmed her suspicions. Whatever approached disturbed Zeus deeply, not merely as potential threat to Olympian authority, but as something personally concerning to the king of gods himself. Of course, she replied with equally false sincerity. I shall assist however necessary. Hera departed with purposeful dignity, already planning her next investigative steps. If Zeus concealed information relevant to Olympian security, alternate sources required consultation, particularly those predating his reign. The Titaness Rhea, mother of the original 6 Olympians, maintained isolation from divine politics but might provide insight into pre-Olympian cosmic structures. Convincing the ancient goddess to share such knowledge would require delicate approach, particularly given Hera's complicated relationship with her mother-in-law. Beyond that, Hestia's subtle communication suggested the hearth goddess possessed relevant information. As eldest Olympian with domains touching every home and sacred space, Hestia observed far more than most realized. Both avenues required exploration. With dimensional barriers weakening and monsters rejecting established authority, understanding these changes became paramount, not merely for Olympian security, but for cosmic stability itself. While gods debated in marble halls, a different investigation unfolded in humbler surroundings. Hestia, having departed Olympus without fanfare, materialized beside a modest cottage overlooking the Mediterranean. Ancient olive trees provided shade while gentle waves lapped nearby shores, creating peaceful ambiance belying the cottage's significance. Here dwelled the oldest oracle in the mortal world, not the famous Pythia at Delphi who served Apollo, but a woman whose prophetic abilities predated Olympian ascension. Some claimed she had witnessed the Titanomachy itself, though few remembered her existence in modern times. Precisely why Hestia valued her perspective. The goddess approached without divine fanfare, assuming the form of a middle-aged woman in simple brown clothing. No thunderous arrival or brilliant illumination announced her presence, merely a gentle knock on weathered wooden doors. They opened immediately, revealing an ancient woman whose exact age remained impossible to determine. Not frail despite apparent years, she carried herself with quiet dignity while mortal and immortal regarded each other with mutual respect. The hearth goddess honors my threshold, the oracle observed, voice carrying unexpected resonance. Events must indeed accelerate if Olympus remembers my existence. Some of us never forgot. Hestia replied warmly. May I enter? The oracle stepped aside, gesturing welcome. Inside, the cottage maintained simplicity bordering on asceticism, functional furniture, modest kitchen, walls adorned with symbolic artwork spanning multiple civilizations. A small hearth occupied the center, flames leaping higher at Hestia's entrance. Tea brewed moments before your arrival, Thea remarked with subtle humor, pouring steaming liquid into clay cups. Prophetic timing has domestic advantages. Hestia accepted the offering, settling onto a wooden chair while gathering thoughts. You've sensed the changes. Indeed, the oracle's expression grew distant. Quote, barriers thin between realms separated since the sundering. The balance keeper stirs after enforced slumber. 9 becomes 1 as cosmic convergence approaches. Then it's truly him, Hestia murmured. Ryujin awakens. Thea nodded solemnly. The dragon god returns, though not as departed. His essence traversed mortal experience, gaining perspective impossible for typical divinity. He returns neither fully divine nor merely mortal, but something unprecedented. Zeus fears this development, Hestia observed, though he conceals specific knowledge from the council. With reason, the oracle acknowledged. Ryujin's authority predates Olympian hierarchy. The creatures you call monsters were his original children and subjects, bound to Olympian service only through complex arrangement following his fragmentation. Hestia absorbed this, connecting fragments of memory from before her siblings' ascension. The monsters recognize their original sovereign, hence their changing behavior. They remember ancient covenants superseding later obligations. Thea sipped her tea thoughtfully. But Ryujin returns to cosmic balance rather than dominance. His mortal experiences tempered nay perspective, unusual development among immortal beings. How should Olympus respond? Hestia asked directly. Zeus prepares defensive measures while others counsel caution. The ancient woman's yes momentarily gleamed with prophetic light. Convergence proceeds regardless of divine preference. Realms separated by necessity now require reconnection as greater threats emerge from cosmic shadows. Opposition merely increases transitional turbulence. She leaned forward, voice dropping to near whisper. Seek the Dragon King where dimensions intersect. Your hearth fire will guide true, as the first flames were his gift to nascent humanity. He created mortal fire, Hestia asked, surprised by this revelation. The original flame bridged divine and mortal realms, sacred promise of protection and connection. Thea smiled enigmatically. Why else would your domain resonate so powerfully? Your hearth represents continuation of his earliest covenant with humanity. Implications cascaded through Hestia's understanding. Her seemingly modest domain, hearth, home, sacred flame, connected to primordial arrangements predating Olympian organization. Perhaps explaining why, despite eschewing power politics, her authority remained fundamentally unchallenged even by Zeus himself. Thank you for this wisdom, Hestia said, rising from her seat. I shall consider appropriate response. The oracle walked her to the threshold, pausing before Hestia departed. One final observation, goddess. When the Dragon King fully awakens, many divine arrangements will require renegotiation, including pay. Our sonal connections long calcified into painful patterns. Hestia understood the reference to her siblings' dysfunctional relationships, particularly Zeus and Hera's millennia of mutual resentment and betrayal. Change brings opportunity alongside disruption, Thea concluded. For those with wisdom to embrace it. While immortals maneuvered through ancient politics, mortal demigods faced more immediate concerns. Camp Half-Blood, sanctuary for children of gods and their mortal partners, experienced unprecedented monster activity along its magical boundaries. Percy Jackson, 18, veteran of multiple divine wars, and son of Poseidon, crouched on Half-Blood Hill observing peculiar monster behavior through binoculars. Beside him, Annabeth Chase maintained detailed notes while simultaneously monitoring communications from other observation posts. That's the third group today, Percy remarked, watching a pack of hellhounds pace the boundary without attempting incursion. Just watching, not attacking. Gathering intelligence, Annabeth suggested, though her tone indicated uncertainty. Or waiting for something specific. Like what? They've never shown this level of coordination before. Percy lowered the binoculars, sea green eyes troubled. It's almost like they're under orders, but not from any god we know. That's precisely what concerns me. Annabeth tucked a blonde curl behind her ear. Gray eyes calculating as always. My dream showed monsters acknowledging authority predating the Olympians themselves. If something ancient enough to command instinctive loyalty from all mythological creatures is awakening. She let the implication hang ominously. Both had experienced enough apocalyptic scenarios to recognize preliminary signs. Has your father said anything useful? She asked, referring to Percy's occasional communications with Poseidon. Percy shook his head. Dad's being deliberately vague, which usually means the Olympians are divided on response. He mentioned cosmic reconfiguration, requiring adjustment rather than opposition, whatever that means. Diplomatic way of saying the gods disagree about whether to fight or negotiate, Annabeth translated. Typical. Their conversation paused as Jason Grace and Piper McLean approached, completing their perimeter check. Despite Camp Half-Blood's impressive magical barriers, recent developments warranted additional security measures. Western Boundary Report, Jason announced, former predator habits evident in his precise delivery. Multiple distinct monster groups maintaining observation positions. No aggressive movements, but their numbers increase hourly. They're talking to each other, too, Piper added, expression troubled. When I tried using charm speak to disperse a group, one actually said. The Queen of Doves cannot override the Dragon King's summons. Then they just ignored me completely. Percy and Annabeth exchanged alarmed glances. Piper's charm speak rarely failed against monsters, regardless of type or intelligence level. Dragon King, Percy repeated. That matches what marine creatures have been saying in the Long Island Sound. Dad's Lieutenant Repo, RTED entire ecosystems reorganizing around some kind of royal summons. I think we need to call a war council, Annabeth decided. Whatever's happening affects all pantheons, not just Greek territory. As if confirming her assessment, the horizon momentarily rippled, reality itself distorting like heat waves above summer pavement. For a heartbeat, something else became visible through the distortion. Mountains unlike any in their geography, strange structures emitting energy unfamiliar to their world, and most disturbingly, a blonde figure wielding a black dagger that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it. The vision vanished before they could process details, but the message seemed clear. Boundaries between worlds thinned rapidly, and whatever approached commanded authority unprecedented in their experience. Back in the shinobi world, Naruto returned to Konoha bearing knowledge that would fundamentally alter their understanding of reality. The journey from the Valley of the End had provided opportunity to organize thoughts and prepare for inevitable questions, though no amount of preparation seemed adequate for explaining dimensional convergence to people whose RLDVIEW limited reality to the 5 great nations and surrounding territories. Tsunade had assembled Konoha's leadership in secure chambers beneath the Hokage Tower, department heads, clan leaders, and senior Jonin forming a comprehensive brain trust for evaluating unprecedented threats. Their expressions ranged from skepticism to concern as Naruto outlined discoveries about their world's true nature. "You're suggesting," Shikaku Nara summarized with characteristic precision, "that our entire world exists within a pocket dimension created during some ancient cosmic conflict, and that dimensional barriers now weaken, allowing contact with other realities." "That's exactly what I'm saying," Naruto confirmed. The Great Toad Sage confirmed everything. "Our world was created as sanctuary during what he called the Divine War, a conflict between beings with power exceeding anything we understand as chakra." Skeptical murmurs rippled through the assembly until Naruto unsheathed the fang of division. "I've seen it myself. The dagger allows me to open temporary windows between dimensions. The Valley of the End contains a natural weak point where I observed the other side, a world inhabited by entities our language would classify as gods and monsters." "Actual gods," Tsunade pressed, maintaining pragmatic focus despite conceptual vastness. "Like religious deities?" "Not exactly." Naruto struggled to articulate concepts exceeding conventional language. "More like beings operating according to different natural laws. Their power derives from concepts and domains rather than chakra manipulation." "Why would such entities interest themselves in our world?" Hiyashi Hyuga asked, Byakugan momentarily activating to examine the dagger with characteristic thoroughness. "Because our world was never truly separate," Naruto explained. "The Sage of 6 Paths, the 10 Tails, even chakra itself, all connected to this greater reality we've been isolated from. And now that isolation ends, whether we're prepared or not." Quote. Silence settled as implications registered. Eventually, Kakashi voiced the essential question: "What exactly should we prepare for?" Naruto considered carefully before answering. "Incursions from creatures unlike anything in our experience. Potentially beneficial contact with advanced entities. Diplomatic complexities beyond conventional politics." He hesitated before adding, "and fundamental changes to how chakra itself functions as dimensional barriers dissolve." "You mean our abilities might change?" Enko Mitarashi clarified with professional interest. "Or expand," Naruto nodded. "Chakra derives from divine energy adapted for human use. As barriers thin, that connection strengthens. We might access techniques previously impossible, while visitors from other dimensions bring capabilities we've never encountered." Practical concerns dominated subsequent discussion: securing borders, establishing protocols for interdimensional contact, preparing civilians for potentially reality-altering developments. Throughout, Naruto noticed Shikamaru's calculating observation, clearly assembling puzzle pieces beyond tactical considerations. When the meeting concluded, the shadow user approached privately while others filtered out with assigned responsibilities. "There's something you're not telling them," Shikamaru observed quietly. "Something about your personal connection to all this." Naruto hesitated, trusting Shikamaru's discretion but struggling to articulate developments he barely understood himself. "According to the Great Sage, I am not just connected to these events, I'm central to them. The entity called Ryujin, the dragon god who created our sanctuary dimension. I'm apparently him, or becoming him again." Saying it aloud, felt simultaneously presumptuous and understated. How could Naruto Uzumaki, orphan troublemaker turned war hero, possibly comprehend existence as primordial deity? Yet increasingly coherent memories suggested exactly that. Cosmic perspective gradually awakening within human consciousness. Rather than dismissing this claim, Shikamaru nodded thoughtfully. That would explain certain inconsistencies in your developmental pattern. Your healing abilities, chakra capacity, and adaptive capabilities always exceeded logical parameters. His matter-of-fact acceptance provided unexpected relief. You believe me, just like that. Troublesome as it sounds, it's the explanation requiring fewest logical leaps. Shikamaru shrugged. Besides, your shadow has been different since the temple. Ocasio, nally manifesting shapes inconsistent with your physical form. Naruto glanced down, noticing subtle draconic patterns rippling across his otherwise normal shadow. Further evidence of transformation he couldn't control or fully comprehend. What happens next? Shikamaru asked practically. I need to establish controlled contact with the other side, Naruto decided. Create diplomatic channel B. 4 random incursions escalate into conflict. The beings there, the Olympians, maintain rigid hierarchy. They'll perceive dimensional bleeding as potential threat unless properly approached. And you intend to be that approach? Shikamaru raised skeptical eyebrow. No offense, but diplomacy isn't historically your strongest skill. Maybe not Naruto Uzumaki's, he acknowledged with faint smile. But apparently, Ryujin maintained cosmic balance through negotiation as much as power. Those diplomatic instincts surface increasingly often. Conversation paused as Sai approached, expression typic. Ally neutral despite unprecedented circumstances. Perimeter sensors detect energy anomalies at 17 locations surrounding Konoha. Analysis suggests interdimensional thinning rather than conventional attack. Naruto nodded, unsurprised. The convergence accelerates. We need to establish controlled crossing point before random breaches proliferate. The Forest of Death contains particularly thin dimensional boundaries. Sai reported. Enko's surveillance team reports unusual creature sightings inconsistent with known species. Then that's where we start, Naruto decided. Assemble specialized team, sensors, barriers experts, and combat specialists with adaptive skill sets. We establish monitored gateway while maintaining defensive posture. As preparations advanced, Naruto felt increasingly divided consciousness, human strategic thinking alongside awakening cosmic awareness. The dagger at his hip pulsed with anticipation, resonating with approaching convergence. 2 worlds separated for millennia prepared for reunion, with Naruto Ryujin suspended between identities at the precise convergence point. His actions in coming days would determine whether this cosmic realignment proceeded through diplomatic cooperation or catastrophic conflict. Balance hung in the balance, with the dragon god's human experience potentially providing perspective crucial for peaceful transition. Beneath Olympus, in chambers rarely visited by younger gods, Hestia knelt before her eternal hearth in deep contemplation. The flames responded unusually to her presence, occasionally shifting to golden hues while forming draconic patterns among conventional fire. Her meditation ended as expected company arrived without fanfare. Hera materialized beside the hearth, regal appearance temper, airily set aside for simpler attire reflecting the private nature of this consultation. Sister, Hestia acknowledged warmly. I anticipated your visit. The council reveals less than shadows conceal, Hera replied, settling beside the hearth with uncharacteristic informality. Zeus prepares for conflict while withholding critical information. Some knowledge predates his reign, Hestia noted neutrally. Perhaps even his memory. Yet you remember. Not accusation but certainty colored Hera's observation. Your domain's connected to foundations older than Olympian hierarchy itself. Hestia studied her sister thoughtfully before responding. Despite complicated relationship with Zeus, Hera maintained unshakable commitment to Olympian stability. Perhaps this situation required historical context exceeding conventional divine politics. What returns is neither enemy nor ally in simple terms, Hestia began carefully. Before Olympians, before Titans, existed entities with authority over fundamental cosmic systems. Among these, Ryujin, the dragon god, maintained balance between opposing forces that might otherwise have destroyed emerging reality. She gestured to the hearth, where flames formed illustrative patterns. During conflicts predating our birth, Ryujin created sanctuary dimensions to protect developing life from cosmic crossfire. When primordial powers threatened total annihilation, he fragmented his essence to maintain dimensional barriers, dividing consciousness into components that would eventually reunite when cosmic stability allowed. And this fragmentation connects to current disturbances. Hera pressed. Reunification begins, Hestia confirmed. Dimensional barriers dissolve as the dragon god's essence reintegrates. The creatures we classify as monsters respond to their original sovereign's return, not rejecting Olympian authority through rebellion, but recognizing primal obligations that precede our reign. Comprehension dawned across Hera's features. Zeus perceives existential threat to his supremacy. As would any ruler confronting power predating their ascension, Hestia acknowledged without judgment. Yet opposition merely complicates necessary cosmic realignment. The barriers must dissolve as greater threats emerge from primordial darkness. What threats could exceed Olympian concern? Hera asked skeptically. Those sealed away before Olympus existed. Hestia replied solemnly. Entities neither divine nor monstrous, but something else entirely. Chaotic absolutes against which Ryujin originally stood guardian. The hearth flames darkened momentarily, forming shadowy shapes of writhing tentacles and impossible geometries before returning to normal illumination. Hera suppressed instinctive shudder at glimpsed horrors exceeding divine comprehension. What course serves Olympus best? She asked practically, Queen's responsibilities overriding personal concern. Diplomatic contact rather than confrontation, Hestia advised. Ryujin returns changed. His essence experienced mortal perspective through human vessel, tempering divine absolutism with compassionate understanding. He seeks cosmic balance rather than hierarchical disruption. Convincing Zeus of this distinction presents significant challenge, Hera observed dryly. Perhaps, Hestia acknowledged with faint smile. Though I suspect Ryujin's approach will prove surprisingly adaptive. His mortal experiences emphasized cooperative problem-solving rather than authoritarian dominance. She paused, studying her sister with ancient insight. There's opportunity within this upheaval, Hera. Cosmic reconfiguration allows reconsideration of arrangements long calcified into painful patterns. The subtle reference to Hera's troubled marriage registered clearly. Millennia of Zeus's infidelities and her reactive vengeance created destructive cycle benefiting neither. What role would you have me play in this transition? Hera asked directly. Observe before judging, Hestia suggested. The returning entity bridges perspectives typically separated, divine and mortal, order and chaos, creation and destruction. Such balanced understanding might prove refreshing after eons of rigid dichotomy. Their discussion concluded with shared understanding. While Zeus prepared defensive measures against perceived invasion, alternative approaches required exploration. Cosmic balance exceeded political hierarchy in ultimate importance. As Hera departed, Hestia returned attention to her hearth, where flames now formed unmistakable message, coordinates indic. Aiding thin dimensional boundary where diplomatic contact might first occur. The location, a forest outside modern human settlement, resonated with unusual chakra signatures indicating controlled approach from the other side. Perhaps, Hestia mused while preparing for unprecedented interdimensional contact, cosmic disruption might ultimately yield positive transformation. After thousands of years entaining sacred flame connected to humanity's hearths, opportunity for renewed covenant between realms offered intriguing possibilities. One certainty remained. Nothing in any world would proceed unchanged through the convergence ahead. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Veil Between Worlds. Dawn painted Konoha in watercolor hues of amber and rose, but Naruto observed the familiar landscape with increasingly unfamiliar eyes. From his vantage point atop the Hokage monument, the village appeared simultaneously precious and fragile, a microcosm within a reality vastly more complex than its inhabitants realized. 3 weeks had passed since the temple discovery. 3 weeks of accelerating changes both external and internal. Memories continued surfacing in dreams and waking flashes, cosmic battles. Diplomatic negotiations between pantheons, the painful decision to fragment consciousness across dimensions. Naruto rubbed his temples, attempting to reconcile dual identities increasingly occupying the same mental space. He remained himself, the orphan troublemaker who fought for acknowledgement, the determined shinobi who protected precious people, yet simultaneously accessed perspectives spanning eons and dimensions. Thought I'd find you brooding up here, came Sakura's voice as she approached from behind. Very Sasuke-esque of you. Naruto managed a smile that almost reached his eyes. Low blow, Sakura-chan. She settled beside him, Medic's gaze clinically assessing his appearance. The physical changes progressed subtly but steadily. Slightly elongated canines, more prominent whisker marks, occasional vertical pupils. And most notably, faint golden scales appearing and disappearing beneath his skin when emotions ran high. The blood work results came back, she reported with PR. Professional detachment barely masking concern. Your cellular structure shows significant mutation, but it's not degradation. It's more like evolution. Your DNA reconfigures itself hourly. Becoming less human, Naruto supplied, voicing what she tactfully avoided. Becoming different, Sakura corrected firmly. Still you, just more. The simplicity of her acceptance provided unexpected comfort. Throughout bizarre revelations and physical transformations, his friends maintained unwavering support, treating him as Naruto first, potential cosmic entity second. Any word from the border patrols? He asked, deliberately shifting topics. Sakura's expression tightened. 17 incursions overnight, mostly confused creatures appearing and disappearing randomly. Nothing hostile yet, but the frequency increases. Shikamaru says it's like watching a dam develop cracks before failure. And the forest of death preparations. Ready for your inspection. Yamato and the barrier corps completed the containment seals yesterday. She hesitated before adding, Tsunade-sama approved your request for controlled dimensional crossing. The team assembles at noon. Naruto nodded, appreciating. The Hokage's trust despite operational risks. Establishing regulated contact between dimensions offered the only viable path forward, the alternative being random breaches multiplying beyond containment capacity. I should get moving then, he decided, rising from his contemplative position. Sakura caught his arm, jade eyes meeting his with intensity that halted movement. Naruto, just promise you'll remember who you are. No matter what you become. The request carried weight beyond simple reassurance. They'd both witnessed friends lost to overwhelming power and destiny, Sasuke's temporary descent into darkness. Obito's corruption through isolation, Madara's transformation from visionary to villain. Some promises I always keep, he replied softly, tapping his heart with absolute certainty. That's my ninja way. Her smile confirmed this reminder of his essential nature provided necessary comfort. Whatever cosmic identity emerged through awakening memories, certain core principles remained inviolate, protecting precious people, honoring commitments, and facing challenges with indomitable spirit. As they descended the monument toward preparation areas, neither commented on increasingly visible phenomenon manifesting throughout Konoha. Momentary ripples in reality where buildings flickered, revealing ghostly overlaid images of completely different architecture, patches of vegetation shifting between normal appearance and mythological variants, and most concerning, civilians occasionally reporting glimpses of creatures straight from legend rather than natural biology. The veil between worlds thinned with each passing hour. Deep within the forest of death, officially training ground 44, specialized teams transformed a natural clearing into Konoha's first interdimensional embassy. Massive trees surrounded the space in protective formation, their ancient roots extending deep into dimensional fault lines identified by sensor teams. Yamato directed operations from the center. Would release abilities creating structures simultaneously functional and symbolic. Concentric ceiling arrays radiated outward, designed to both monitor and potentially contain whatever emerged from controlled crossing. Very impressive, Naruto acknowledged, surveying completed preparations. Theoretical interdimensional gateway construction wasn't covered at the academy, Yamato replied with characteristic dry humor. We're improvising based on barrier core analysis of existing breaches. Naruto activated enhanced perception, seeing beyond conventional reality to the underlying dimensional fabric. The forest's unique properties made perfect sense from cosmic perspective. This location had always been thin, explaining its abnormal ecology and concentrated chakra phenomena. The existing weaknesses follow this pattern, he observed, gesturing toward invisible, to others, fracture lines. If we adjust the primary array 15 degrees eastward, it will align more naturally with the dimensional seam. Yamato signaled to the sealing team, who immediately began recalibration without questioning how Naruto perceived such details. Over recent weeks, his insights into metaphysical mechanics consistently proved accurate despite lacking conventional explanation. The dagger responds strongly here, Naruto noted, unsheathing the fang of division. The weapon pulsed with anticipation. Dark material drinking ambient light while symbols along its length rearranged into instructional patterns only he could interpret. Estimated time until operational readiness? Tsunade inquired, approaching with Shizune and senior advisors in tow. The physical preparations are complete, Yamato reported. Final barrier calibrations require approximately 30 minutes. And the diplomatic contingent, she pressed. Shikamaru stepped forward, clipboard in hand. Assembled according to specifications, sensors, barrier specialists, combat experts, and medical support, plus linguistic specialists, though we're operating under assumption that conventional translation may prove inadequate for interdimensional communication. Tsunade nodded, attention shifting to Naruto. And you, are you prepared for whatever awaits on the other side? The question carried multiple layers: concern for his safety, uncertainty about his changing nature, and practical assessment of mission viability. Before he could respond, perimeter alarms activated with urgent chakra pulses. Breach in progress, came the shouted warning from sensor teams. Southeast quadrant, 3 kilometers and closing rapidly. Not our controlled opening, Yamato clarified unnecessarily, would release already forming defensive structures. Something breaking through independently. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, extending senses beyond conventional perception. The approaching entity radiated unfamiliar energy, neither chakra nor purely physical, but something between existence states. I'll intercept, he decided, already moving. Naruto. Wait, Tsunade began. It's responding to me specifically, he explained without slowing. Better to meet it away from the main team. He accelerated Hero massive trees with fluid efficiency, enhanced perception tracking the interdimensional anomaly as it approached. Behind him, Shikamaru coordinated defensive repositioning while dispatching clones to maintain visual contact with Naruto himself. The breach manifested as reality literally tearing open, space folding awkwardly as dimensions intersected without proper alignment. Through his jagged opening emerged something from nightmare or legend. A massive 3-headed dog the size of a small building, midnight black fur absorbing light while crimson eyes burned with supernatural intensity. Naruto halted at respectful distance, assessing rather than immediately engaging. The creature, recognizable from fragmented divine memory as Cerberus, or something similar, appeared disoriented rather than aggressive. Massive head swinging in confused arcs while powerful limbs struggled to navigate unfamiliar terrain. Easy, Naruto called, instinctively adjusting his chakra frequency to pattern more comprehensible to extra-dimensional entities. All 3 heads snapped toward him with synchronized focus, nostrils flaring as they processed his scent. Recognition blazed across 6 crimson eyes, followed by reaction unprecedented in shinobi experience with hostile entities. The massive beast, guardian of underworld boundaries in Olympian cosmology, lowered its central head in unmistakable genuflection. Dragon King, rumbled a voice like avalanches contained within vocal cords. The barriers fail, ancient covenants activate, your children seek guidance. Naruto approached cautiously, aware of Anbu teams surrounding the clearing at strategic intervals. You recognize me, though I don't yet fully remember you. Your essence transcends form, the creature responded. 3 heads maintaining deferential posture. Fragmented but awakening, we sense restoration approaching completion. Why have you crossed dimensions? Naruto asked, stopping within touching distance of the massive entity. Dimensional barriers dissolve without the keeper's maintenance. Old passages reopen without regulation. The central head rose slightly, crimson eyes studying Naruto with ancient intelligence. More concerning, the sealed ones stir in response to your awakening. They sense opportunity in transitional chaos. Memories flashed through Naruto's consciousness. Entities sealed beyond dimensional boundaries, threats exceeding conventional divine or mortal comprehension. The greater evil that had necessitated Ryujin's original sacrifice. Return to your realm, Naruto commanded, voice resonating with authority not entirely his own. Tell those with ears to hear, controlled convergence approaches. Chaotic breaches risk universal integrity. The ancient Chi boundaries will be re-established under new covenant. The massive beast lowered all three heads in acknowledgement, muscles bunching for departure, then froze as new presences entered the clearing. Chi, Tsunade and Shikamaru approached with cautious determination, positioning themselves strategically near Naruto. Human allies? Cerberus questioned, heads tilting in canine curiosity. Friends and comrades, Naruto corrected firmly. To be accorded all respect due my own person. The creature studied the newcomers before offering subtle genuflection toward them as well, behavior entirely foreign to documented monster psychology. The interdimensional gateway nears completion, Shikamaru reported, maintaining remarkable composure despite addressing a mythological entity. If this visitor provides useful intelligence regarding the other side, perhaps it should accompany us back to base. I cannot remain, Cerberus rumbled apologetically. My absence from assigned post already draws attention. The Olympians respond to boundary failures with increasing alarm, unaware of the greater context. Then deliver a message, Naruto decided. Inform whoever commands your serve. Ice. Diplomatic contact between realms should proceed through controlled channels rather than random breaches. We intend peaceful communication rather than territorial expansion. The creature's 6 eyes blinked in synchronized consideration. The message shall be delivered, though reception remains uncertain. The King of Olympus views interdimensional phenomena as potential threat rather than cosmic necessity. With respectful departure gesture, the massive entity backed toward the dimensional tear, which fluctuated with increasing instability. Before disappearing completely, its central head offered final warning. Beware the silver huntress who approaches dimensional boundaries. Her arrows find targets across realities, and her loyalty to Olympian hierarchy exceeds rational caution. The tear sealed itself with reality-bending contraction, leaving the clearing peacefully empty save for disturbingly permanent scorch marks where dimensional boundaries had temporarily dissolved. Tsunade broke the silence first. Did you just give orders to a mythological monster that should have tried to eat us? And did it actually listen? Apparently, Naruto acknowledged, processing implications himself. The creatures from the other side, they recognize something in me. Something that predates their current allegiances. The original, Monster King, aspect of this Ryujin entity, Shikamaru theorized. Fascinating hierarchical implications. If interdimensional creatures instinctively acknowledge your authority, diplomatic avenues expand considerably. Assuming their CU, Rent Masters appreciate such divided loyalty, Tsunade noted pragmatically. How would you respond to discovering your subordinates recognize higher authority previously unknown to you? The question gave them pause. From leadership perspective, such revelation represented significant security threat, potentially explaining hostile preparations detected on the other side. We proceed with the controlled gateway, Naruto decided, but with enhanced defensive posture. If this silver huntress approaches with hostile intent, we demonstrate capacity for both defense and diplomacy. As they returned toward the primary site, Naruto navigated complex emotional territory. The creatures emerging from dimensional breaches weren't merely acknowledging him, they were welcoming him, like long-lost family recognizing returned patriarch. Something deeply personal underlay cosmic politics, connecting Ryujin to these entities beyond mere hierarchy. The dragon god hadn't simply ruled monsters, he'd created them, protected them, established their place within cosmic order. They were, in most meaningful senses, his children. This realization colored the approaching interdimensional contact with additional significance. Beyond diplomatic necessity or cosmic mechanics, fundamental questions of identity and relationship emerged, connections spanning dimensions and transcending conventional categorization. Naruto Uzumaki, human shinobi, had fought for acknowledgement throughout his life. Ryujin, awakening dragon god, apparently commanded instinctive recognition from entities across realities. Reconciling these perspectives represented challenge exceeding mere cosmic power, requiring integration of human compassion with divine responsibility in unprecedented balance. While shinobi prepared controlled dimensional crossing, significant developments unfolded in the Olympian world. Artemis tracked interdimensional disturbances through ancient forests, following energy signatures unli. Anything in documented divine experience. The goddess maintained hunting form, athletic young woman with auburn hair and silver eyes, clad in practical garb designed for woodland stealth. Her sacred bow materialized as needed. Silver arrows capable of finding targets across impossible distances or intervening barriers. The disruptions increase, observed her lieutenant, Talia Grace, examining. G disturbed undergrowth where reality had momentarily thinned. This makes 17 breaches in our territory alone. 83 across all Olympian domains, Artemis corrected grimly. Apollo's reports indicate geometric progression. Mathematical models suggest complete boundary failure within fortnight unless countermeasures succeed. The implications troubled both huntresses. Olympian Sec. Eurity depended partly on dimensional isolation, separation from other pantheons, primordial threats, and cosmic complexities beyond divine administrative capacity. The breach signatures appear increasingly deliberate, Talia noted. Examining energy residue with experienced eye. Early failures manifested randomly, but recent patterns suggest intentional probing. Someone examines our defenses systematically. Precisely Zeus's concern, Artemis acknowledged. Hence our assignment to identify responsible entities and assess threat level. What remained unspoken? Growing evidence suggested essay dimensional intrusions originated from realm previously unknown to Olympian intelligence. Not Egyptian, Norse, or other documented mythological territories, but something entirely outside established cosmological maps. Their investigation halted abruptly as Artemis sensed approaching presence. Not monster or mortal, but familiar divine energy with uncharacteristic urgency. Hermes materialize. D without conventional entrance flourish, Caduceus staff pulsing with active power rather than merely symbolic presence. The messenger god's expression conveyed unusual severity beneath typically casual demeanor. Artemis, he acknowledged with uncharacteristic formality. Priority communication from Olympus. Zeus convenes emergency session immediately. Preliminary intelligence suggests coordinated breach imminent. Location, she demanded, already calculating strategic response. Unknown precisely, but energy concentrations suggest northeastern quadrant of mortal realm, approximately 300 kilometers from current Olympus access point. Hermes glanced significantly at Talia. Hunters should establish perimeter while gods assess from Olympus. The lieutenant nodded understanding. As daughter of Zeus with significant combat experience, Talia could coordinate demigod response while immortals managed cosmic aspects. 300 kilometers, Artemis calculated mentally. That approximates the restricted forest zone where multiple anomalies manifested. Curious concentration point. More concerning, Hermes added, Cerberus temporarily abandoned underworld post, Ret. Earning with cryptic message about controlled convergence, and the Dragon King's return. Hades demands explanation while Zeus prepares preemptive security measures. Artemis absorbed this with Hunter's analytical precision. Cerberus leaving assigned position represented unprecedented behavior disruption. The three-headed guardian maintained absolute post-fidelity regardless of circumstance. I'll return immediately, she decided, transferring field command to Talia with succinct instructions. The lieutenant departed with silver wolves flanking her position, deadly escorts appropriate for potential interdimensional confrontation. Before teleporting to Olympus, Artemis cast final evaluative gaze across disturbed forest. Something fundamental shifted in cosmic underpinnings, not merely physical disruption but hierarchical realignment affecting entities previously bound by unbreakable covenant. If Cerberus himself acknowledged external authority superseding Hades, divine command, what other loyalties might prove conditional rather than absolute? The question carried troubling implications for Olympian security architecture, which presumed certain foundational principles remained inviolate regardless of external pressure. If those assumptions proved false, the entire divine governance model required reassessment. With characteristic efficiency, Artemis departed in silver flash, preparing mental report for increasingly complex situation. Whatever approached from beyond dimensional boundaries, its influence already reached entities supposedly bound to absolute Olympian loyalty. The Emergency Olympian Council manifested with unprecedented attendance, all major and numerous minor gods converging on the marble hull in response to escalating cosmic disturbances. Zeus CCUPIED central throne with characteristic thunderous expression, master bolt crackling with barely contained annoyance. Hera observed proceedings with outward calm masking intense analytical assessment. Recent consultations with Hestia and independent research confirmed initial suspicions. These events connected to pre-Olympian cosmic arrangements unfamiliar to younger gods but profoundly significant to universal stability. Apollo arrived simultaneously with his twin, the sun and moon deities taking respective positions with synchronized efficiency. Artemis's expression suggested field observations matched concerning patterns reported elsewhere, interdimensional boundary failure accelerating beyond containment capacity. The Council acknowledges unprecedented cosmic disruption. Zeus began without preamble. Dimensional boundaries separating our realm from external territories degrade at accelerating rate. Intelligence suggests coordinated action rather than natural phenomenon. RMURS rippled through divine assembly as participants processed implications. Olympian security doctrine presumed dimensional isolation from competing pantheons and primordial threats, Foundation now see. Rumbling without apparent countermeasure. Cerberus abandoned his post, Hades reported from guest throne, expression particularly dour even by underworld standards. Upon return, he delivered message, allegedly from the Dragon King, suggesting diplomatic contact between realms should proceed through controlled channels. This revelation provoked genuine disturbance among elder gods while younger deities exchanged confused glances at unfamiliar reference. Poseidon and Zeus shared brief but significant look, confirming Hera's suspicion that certain senior Olympians possessed knowledge unavailable to general council. Similar phenomena affect marine territories, Poseidon contributed reluctantly. Creatures traditionally bound to Olympian authority increasingly reference ancient Kavana and original sovereign rights predating our governance. What sovereign? Athena inquired with characteristic precision. What entity commands instinctive recognition from entities bound by divine covenant? Uncomfortable silence followed this direct question until unexpected voice responded from hearth position. One who existed before Olympians, Hestia stated, flames reflecting in ancient eyes. Before Titans, the being called Ryujin, dragon god of balance, whose authority over entities classified as monsters, predates current cosmic hierarchy. All attention shifted to the eldest Olympian, whose rare council contributions carried proportional significance. Zeus's expression tightened perceptibly while Poseidon nodded subtle confirmation. Explain this entity, Athena requested. Strategic mind already calculating implications. Hestia gestured toward hearth flames, which formed illustrative patterns supplementing her explanation. In primordial times, before current cosmic arrangement, Ryujin maintained balance between fundamental forces that might otherwise have destroyed emerging reality. During conflicts between nascent divine hierarchies, he created sanctuary dimensions to protect developing life. The flames displayed draconic entity mediating between opposing cosmic forces, creating dimensional barriers separating conflicting realities, and eventually augmenting its own essence to maintain universal stability. When existence itself faced annihilation through power struggles between primordial entities, Ryujin sacrificed cohesive consciousness, Ding essence into components sealed across dimensions to maintain cosmic boundaries. The significance registered differently across divine expressions, confusion among younger gods, calculation among strategic deities, and most tellingly, apprehension among the original 6 Olympians who clearly recognized this information despite its absence from standard mythological records. If this entity fragmented itself, Athena reasoned aloud, what causes current boundary failure? Reunification. Hestia answered simply. The divided consciousness reintegrates as cosmic conditions necessitate renewed balance keeping. The barriers dissolve not through external attack but intended restoration of original arrangement. Zeus's knuckles widened around his master bolt. This interpretation lacks confirmation. Alternative explanation suggests external invasion requiring immediate defensive response. Available evidence supports Hestia's analysis, Athena countered respectfully but firmly. Coordinated monster behavioral changes indicate recognition rather than coercion. Dimensional breaches demonstrate consistent patterns suggesting controlled testing rather than aggressive penetration. The Silver Huntress provides first-hand field observation, Zeus deflected, gesturing toward Artemis. Report your findings. The goddess of the hunt rose with characteristic precision, Summa, rizzing reconnaissance without speculation or embellishment. Her description of dimensional tiers, creature behavior changes, and energy signatures matched patterns reported throughout divine territories. Most significantly, she concluded, intelligence indicates imminent coordinated dimensional opening in northeastern forest region, not random breach but deliberate contact attempt. Invasion, Zeus interpreted immediately. Our diplomatic approach, Poseidon countered. If these disturbances originate with entity described by Hestia, hostile response might provoke unnecessary cosmic disruption. The implicit challenge to Zeus's authority created palpable tension, council members subtly repositioning according to political alignment. Such open disagreement between the brothers occurred rarely, typically indicating fundamental policy dispute rather than tactical disagreement. Opinions divide without additional intelligence, Hera observed, breaking extended silence. Perhaps direct, observation of this coordinated opening would provide necessary clarity before committing to specific response. The reasonable suggestion offered face-saving compromise between competing positions. Zeus could maintain defensive posture without immediate hostile action, while allowing possibility of diplomatic contact should circumstances warrant. Very well, Zeus decided with transparent reluctance. Artemis will lead observation team to breach location, accompanied by Apollo for additional ranged coverage. Athena coordinates tactical assessment while Ares prepares response force should hostilities commence. He fixed the assembly with stern glare, electricity crackling through his beard. But make no mistake, Olympus will not cede authority to forgotten entities regardless of historical precedent. We govern this realm now. The pronouncement effectively ended discussion, gods departing to execute assigned responsibilities while Zeus retired to private chambers with thunderous expression suggesting continued displeasure despite apparent compromise. Hera remained seated, contemplating implications with millennia of political experience. Zeus's reaction exceeded normal territorial concern, suggesting personal stake in maintaining specific cosmic narrative. Something about this awakening entity threatened not merely Olympian hierarchy but her husband's individual position within it. As gods filtered from the chamber, Hestia approached with subtle gesture indicating private communication. Together they withdrew to the hearth goddess's personal chambers where conversa. Chion could proceed without political observation. Zeus fears personal implications rather than merely cosmic disruption, Hera stated once privacy established. What specific history connects him to this returning entity? Hestia studied her sister thoughtfully before responding. Before Zeus established dominance over monster entities, they answered to their creator, Ryujin, whose authority derived from cosmic function rather than martial conquest. Zeus's early reign involved reallocation of certain primordial arrangements without full understanding of underlying cosmic mechanics. Quote, suggesting current divine governance model contains structural flaws unknown to its architects, Hera interpreted with characteristic directness. Cosmic systems remain fundamentally sound through inherent balance mechanisms rather than perfect administration, Hestia clarified diplomatically. But yes, certain original arrangements were modified without complete comprehension of long-term implications. The hearth goddess gestured toward sacred flames, which formed new illustrative pattern, dimensional maps showing intersection points between reality systems previously considered separate. The controlled opening approaches completion. I intend direct observation independent of official delegation. Hera raised elegant eyebrow, unusual initiative for one typically avoiding political engagement. Some matters transcend politics, Hestia replied with faint smile. The hearth connects to foundations older than current governance. My domain requires understanding regardless of administrative preference. Unspoken implications registered clearly. Hestia possessed authority predating current Olympian hierarchy, connected to cosmic systems established during primordial organization. Her interest in these developments exceeded political curiosity, touching foundational responsibilities typically unacknowledged by younger gods. Perhaps broader perspective proves beneficial during unprecedented developments. Hera acknowledged, I shall accompany your independent observation, if welcome. The offer surprised both through its directness and implicit political realignment. As Zeus's queen, Hera traditionally maintained at least public support for his positions regardless of private reservations. Cosmic reconfiguration presents opportunity for reassessment on multiple levels. Hestia observed with gentle understanding. Your perspective would provide valuable balance to evaluation. Agreement reached. They departed through method unavailable to most deities, Hestia. S unique ability to travel through any hearth fire, regardless of intervening distance or barriers. As eldest Olympian with domain connecting every household, her movement capabilities exceeded conventional divine transportation limitations. Together they vanished into sacred flame, bypassing official observation teams while proceeding directly toward interdimensional nexus. Whatever entity emerged from cosmic convergence, their independent assessment would provide perspective unconstrained by political positioning or administrative hierarchy. Deep within Konoha's forest of death, final preparations for controlled dimensional opening proceeded with practiced shinobi efficiency. Concentric ceiling arrays radiated outward from central platform where Naruto would ultimately channel the Fang of Division's dimensional properties. Specialized teams maintained strategic positions, barrier core ready to contain potential threats, sensors monitoring dimensional fluctuations, combat specialists prepared for hostile emergence, and medical units standing by for contingencies exceeding normal field parameters. Naruto stood slightly apart, mind divided between tactical considerations and increasingly integrated cosmic awareness. The dagger pulsed against his hip, resonating with proximity to dimensional fault line while previously fragmented memories consolidated into coherent understanding. He recognized this location now, not merely as training ground within Konoha's boundaries, but as intentionally constructed dimensional anchor point. Hashirama Senju hadn't selected this area randomly for village foundation. He'd deliberately incorporated pre-existing cosmic convergence point into municipal design, using wood release to stabilize interdimensional boundaries. Final safety protocols complete, Yamato reported. Approaching with Kakashi and Tsunade. Containment seals at maximum capacity with redundant fail-safes. If anything unexpected emerges, we can isolate this section of forest within layered barrier system. The diplomatic team stands ready, Kakashi added. Though I suspect conventional protocols may require significant adaptation for interdimensional context. Tsunade studied Naruto with professional medical assessment and personal concern. Your condition? He considered the question's multiple layers before responding. Physically stable despite continuing changes. Cognitively integrated enough to maintain rational function alongside expanding awareness. Emotionally complicated. The honest assessment earned approving nod. Whatever cosmic entity he progressively became, maintaining human connection through authentic communication demonstrated promising integration rather than personality displacement. I sense significant activity on the other side, Naruto added. Enhanced perception detecting dimensional pressure beyond conventional chakra sensing. They've identified our intended crossing point and dispatched observation teams. Multiple powerful entities approach their side of the barrier. Hostile, Shikamaru inquired, joining conversation with clipboard containing final preparation checklist. Cautious rather than immediately aggressive, Naruto clarified, but prepared for potential conflict. Their governance structure perceives interdimensional contact as security threat rather than cosmic necessity. Understandable perspective, Tsunade acknowledged. From administrative viewpoint, unexpected dimensional breach represents significant security concern regardless of peaceful intention. The diplomatic insight demonstrated why she excelled as Hokage despite personal distaste for political maneuvering. Leadership required understanding opposing viewpoints rather than merely dismissing them as irrational or hostile. We proceed as planned, she decided. Demonstrate clear peaceful intention while maintaining defensive capability. Classic diplomatic approach for initial contact with unknown power. Naruto nodded agreement, moving toward central platform where final activation would occur. The cleared space hummed with layered barrier techniques and monitoring sensors, creating controlled environment for unprecedented interdimensional diplomacy. As he reached position, enhanced perception detected approaching signatures from unexpected vector, not the official Olympian delegation gathering. At corresponding location on their side, but separate entities moving with greater subtlety and purpose. Interesting. Internal political divisions existed within their governance structure, with Toin factions pursuing independent assessment rather than adhering to official position. Potentially useful information for diplomatic approach, suggesting flexibility within apparently rigid hierarchy. Commencing dimensional interface, Naruto announced, unsheathing the Fang of Division. The weapon pulsed eagerly in his grip, dark material drinking ambient light while symbols along its length. Arranged into activation sequence only he could interpret. Following instinctual guidance emerging from increasingly integrated memories, Naruto channeled specific energy frequency through the blade W. Heil tracing precise pattern in space before him. Reality rippled, distorted, then parted like curtains to reveal, elsewhere. The dimensional opening stabilized at approximately 3 meters diameter, large enough for comfortable passage but controlled enough for security management. Through this portal appeared forested landscapes similar to their own, though subtle differences in vegetation, light quality, and atmospheric composition indicated different reality system. Most significantly, the other side contained no immediately visible observers despite earlier detection of approaching entities. They maintained distance, assessing from concealment rather than presenting obvious diplomatic presence. Reasonable caution, though potentially complicating initial contact. Naruto considered options before making decision appropriate to demonstrated shinobi values rather than cosmic authority. "I'll proceed first," he stated. Alone and visibly unarmed. Unacceptable risk profile, Shikamaru objected immediately. Standard protocols require. Conventional protocols designed for conventional situations, Naruto interrupted gently. This requires demonstrating trust while acknowledging their security concerns. They observe without presenting targets. I'll reciprocate by presenting single, non-threatening contact point. Before further objections manifested, he handed the fang of division to Tsunade. Symbolic gesture visible to hidden watchers, demonstrating willingness to proceed without obvious weaponry despite leadership position. Maintain portal stability through secondary barrier techniques. He instructed. I'll establish initial communication before suggesting formal diplomatic exchange. With casual confidence masking reasonable apprehension, Naruto stepped through dimensional opening, crossing boundary between worlds for the first time in conscious memory. The transition itself felt simultaneously foreign and familiar, like returning to childhood home after extended absence. The forest beyond appeared conventionally terrestrial at first glance, though enhanced perception detected subtle differences in fundamental physical properties. Gravity pulled slightly differently. Light carried additional information beyond visual spectrum, and most significantly, ambient energy patterns operated according to different principles than chakra-based systems. Naruto stood peacefully in small clearing, hands visible and posture deliberately non-threatening while addressing seemingly empty forest. "I come with peaceful intention, representing the shinobi nations beyond this dimensional boundary," he announced clearly. "We seek diplomatic contact rather than territorial expansion or hostile engagement." Silence extended long enough to seem deliberate rather than hesitant. Eventually, subtle movement indicated approach from concealed observation position approximately 30 meters northeast. Calculating tactical response while maintaining diplomatic posture, Naruto waited patiently as silver-clad figure emerged from dense foliage. The Silver Huntress matched descriptions from both recovered memory and Cerberus's warning. Athletic young woman, with auburn hair and piercing silver eyes, carrying wooden bow that radiated power exceeding its physical composition. Divine energy signature identified her as significant entity within Olympian hierarchy, Artemis, goddess of the hunt and wilderness. "You cross dimensional boundaries uninvited," she stated without preamble, arrow nocked but pointed groundward in matching non-aggressive positioning. "Identify yourself and your purpose." Quote, "Naruto Uzumaki, Jonin of Konohagakure," he responded directly. Though that identification grows increasingly incomplete as circumstances evolve. The goddess's eyes narrowed slightly. Divine perception clearly detecting something beyond conventional human parameters. "You appear mortal yet radiate energy inconsistent with human limitation. Explain." C. Complicated request requiring equally complex response. Naruto considered options before deciding direct approach served better than political maneuvering. Honesty representing core value worth maintaining regardless of cosmic complications. "My existence currently transitions between states," he explained candidly. "Born human in dimension separated from yours through ancient arrangement, I progressively recover memories and capabilities of entity called Ryujin, the dragon god responsible for original dimensional partition." The arrow previously pointed groundward snapped to full draw, aimed precisely at his heart. "You claim identity with primordial entity preceding Olympian governance." "Not claim. Acknowledge with appropriate uncertainty and caution, Naruto clarified, maintaining non-threatening posture despite escalated tension. The process remains incomplete and partially understood even by me. I retained human perspective alongside expanding cosmic awareness, creating unique V.W. point potentially valuable during dimensional reconnection. Artemis maintained full draw while processing this information, divine perception clearly assessing validity beyond mere verbal declaration. The standoff might have continued indefinitely if not for unexpected interruption from nearby location. Perhaps verification from independent source proves useful, came warm feminine voice as T.Wo additional figures emerged from different forest section. Naruto recognized their divine signatures from recovered memory. Hestia, eldest Olympian and goddess of hearth and home, accompanied by Hera, queen of Olympus and goddess of marriage and family. Their presence independent from official observation team suggested internal political division worth noting for diplomatic purposes. The HEA.RTH remembers what administration forgets, Hestia continued, approaching with quiet confidence while flame-like energy danced around her form. The entity before us indeed carries Ryujin's essence, Huff integrated with human experience in unprecedented fashion. Unprecedented and potentially significant, Hera added, regal posture contrasting with surprisingly open expression. Cosmic Governor, NCE benefits from perspective combining divine awareness with mortal understanding, viewpoint typically unavailable to established hierarchy. Artemis lowered her bow fractionally, respect for the goddesses evident despite continuing suspicion. Zeus dispatched official observation team with specific protocols. Independent assessment exceeds authorized parameters. Some matters transcend administrative convenience. Hestia replied with gentle firmness. Cosmic realignment affects foundational systems predating current governance structure. Comprehensive evaluation requires perspective beyond tactical assessment. The diplomatic exchange revealed significant information about Olympian political dynamics, rigid hierarchical structure with Zeus at apex, procedural emphasis governing official response. Yet flexibility within system allowing independent initiative by established entities. Your dimensional crossing represents deliberate diplomatic approach rather than territorial incursion, Hera observed. Addressing Naruto directly, unusual restraint for entity possessing authority predating current cosmic arrangement. The perceptive assessment deserved equally thoughtful response. Authority without responsibility creates imbalance regardless of dimensional context, Naruto replied. My human experiences emphasized cooperation and mutual understanding rather than dominance hierarchy. Whatever cosmic position eventually resolves, those principles remain fundamental. Something shifted in Hera's expression, reassessment based on unexpected philosophical position rather than power dynamics. The goddess of marriage clearly expected conventional authority claim rather than cooperative approach, the difference registering a significant departure from established pattern. Before conversation could develop further, disturbance manifested from original dimensional opening. Chakra flared as barrier specialists responded to unexpected development, reality rippling around portal edges as dimensional integrity fluctuated unpredictably. The controlled opening destabilizes, Naruto observed with enhanced perception. Something interferes with boundary mechanics from third vector. Artemis immediately resumed defensive posture, arrow aimed toward portal rather than Naruto himself. Deception strategy. Diplomatic approach masking actual incursion. No, Naruto replied with absolute certainty. Already moving toward dimensional opening. External interference from entity that benefits from chaotic transition rather than controlled convergence. The ancient enemies stir earlier than anticipated. He reached the portal just as reality distorted beyond established parameters. The carefully constructed opening between Shinobi World and Olympian Dimension twisted sideways, expanding erratically while incorporating third-dimensional vector previously sealed beyond cosmic accessibility. Through this unintended breach emerged something defying conventional categorization. Neither creature nor energy but something between states, tentacles composed of conceptual wrongness rather than physical matter, stretching toward both realities with consuming intention. Seal the breach, came Shikamaru's voice from Shinobi's side, barrier specialists already implementing containment protocols. Impossible while connection persists, Naruto called back, instinct Veli reaching for the fang of division before remembering he deliberately surrendered it as diplomatic gesture. The encroaching entity, something ancient and hungry sealed beyond dimensional boundary. IEs during primordial conflicts, reached simultaneously toward both worlds, tentacles of anti-reality threatening to establish bridgehead between dimensions. Without conscious thought, Naruto's body responded to threat from cosmic perspective rather than human limitation. Golden energy erupted around his form, draconic features manifesting through human appearance as fragmented divinity temporarily unified through crisis response. Return to sealed darkness, ***, he commanded, voice resonating with authority transcending conventional sound. 9 distinct energy signatures, recognizable as lead beast chakra but fundamentally altered, manifested around him, forming barrier pattern between dimensions while repelling conceptual corruption attempting manifestation. On the Olympian side, Hestia moved with unexpected swiftness. Sacred flame expanding beyond conventional parameters to form secondary containment working harmoniously with Naruto's energy. Hera contributed third defensive layer. Peacock patterns stabilizing dimensional boundaries through authority derived from foundational cosmic position. Artemis, demonstrating admirable tactical flexibility, fired silver arrows directly into the intrusive entity. Divine hunting implements designed to find any target struck conceptual corruption with surprising effectiveness, temporarily disrupting its manifestation pattern. On Shinobi's side, Yamato and barrier specialists implemented layered defense while Tsunade reached decisive conclusion. She approached the fluctuating portal, fang of division held carefully in experienced hand. Naruto, she called through dimensional distortion. You need this. Understanding her intention, Naruto reached through spatial distortion, accepting the ancient weapon with gratitude for her trust despite unprecedented circumstances. The moment his hand closed around familiar hilt, integrated memory provided necessary procedure. The Fang of Division, weapon that had originally separated Eugen's essence, reversed function through specific activation sequence. Where it once divided, it now unified. Where it once separated realities, it now established proper relationship between them. Naruto drove the blade into precise dimensional coordinates, simultaneously channeling 9 distinct energy signatures through its impossible material. Golden light erupted from impact point, spreading outward in controlled wave that reorganized spatial relationships according to original cosmic design rather than chaotic interference. The intrusive entity recoiled as dimensional boundaries reasserted intended configuration. Tentacles of conceptual wrongness forced back into sealed darkness beyond accessible reality. The portal between Shinobi World and Olympian dimension stabilized, return in to planned parameters while third vector sealed completely. As reality settled into proper alignment, Naruto maintained dimensional blade at stabilization point, ensuring complete re-establishment of intended boundary mechanics. Only when diagnostic perception confirmed proper configuration did he withdraw the weapon, allowing normal dimensional relationship to resume natural function. The Crisis is resolved with surprising efficiency given its cosmic implications, leaving 3 Olympian goddesses and 1 transitioning dragon god standing in peaceful forest clearing beside properly functioning interdimensional portal. That, Naruto observed with touch of human humor breaking through cosmic significance, was not included in our diplomatic contact protocols. Hestia's warm laughter dead perfect response to tension-breaking comment, her sacred flame returning to normal proportions while maintaining subtle protective barrier around interdimensional opening. Cosmic convergence Ely proceeds according to administrative expectation, she noted with ancient wisdom wrapped in gentle humor. Though I suspect this particular complication exceeds even pessimistic projection. The sealed entity attempted opportunistic manifestation during controlled boundary reconfiguration, Hera analyzed with impressive accuracy. Suggesting intelligence rather than random cosmic event, deliberate exploitation of transition vulnerability. Artemis lowered her bow completely, tactical assessment clearly recognizing cooperative defense rather than coordinated deception. Your response prioritized universal security above factional advantage, she observed, addressing Naruto directly. Interesting priority selection for entity claiming primordial authority. Authority exists to protect, not dominate, Naruto replied simply, allowing golden energy to subside while maintaining dimensional monitoring. At least, that's how this human understands cosmic responsibility. Something she, FTED in the goddess's silver eyes, reassessment based on demonstrated values rather than theoretical positioning. Without lowering her guard entirely, Artemis adjusted stance from combat-ready to diplomatic-adjacent, indicating provisional acceptance of non-hostile classification. The official observation team approaches, she noted, divine senses detecting movement through forest despite considerable distance. Zeus dispatched Apollo and myself with specific contact protocols emphasizing security assessment rather than diplomatic engagement. Perhaps circumstances warrant protocol adaptation, Hera suggested with subtle authority. Given demonstrated cooperative defense against common threat, initial classification adjusts from potential hostile to provisional ally pending comprehensive evaluation. The diplomatic reclassification carried significant weight coming from Olympian Queen, suggesting political support potentially valuable during inevitable hierarchical discussions. Naruto recognized opportunity to establish positive foundation for subsequent negotiations. I propose formalized diplomatic exchange between representatives of both dimensions, he suggested. Controlled environmental parameters, limited participant numbers, and specific agenda focused on dimensional stabilization rather than political reorganization. Reasonable approach, Hestia agreed immediately. The hearth offers neutral ground for initial discussion, with my personal guarantee of participant safety regardless of political position. The offer carried weight beyond conventional diplomatic courtesy. As eldest Olympian with domain connecting to cosmic foundations, Hestia's guarantee represented more than mere hospitality. It established sacred guest rights transcending normal political vulnerability. Acceptable terms. Came new voice as Apollo emerged from forest boundary, golden aura contrasting with his twin's silver energy signature. The sun god maintained careful neutrality despite obvious curiosity. Formal diplomatic position temporarily superseding personal interest. Artemis provides field assessment, he inquired professionally. Initial contact established with entity claiming transitional identity. She reported with commendable objectivity. Dimensional disturbance repelled through cooperative defense involving representatives from both realms. Provisional C. Classification. Non-hostile extraterrestrial entity with significant cosmic awareness. The carefully worded report provided factual summary while avoiding political interpretation that might constrain subsequent Olympian positioning. Apollo nodded appreciation for tactical diplomacy before addressing Naruto directly. Zeus requires comprehensive assessment before authorizing formal diplomatic engagement, he stated. Neither hostile nor particularly friendly. This preliminary contact exceeds authorized parameters but provides valuable intelligence regarding your intentions and capabilities. Understandable security procedure, Naruto acknowledged. Though cosmic necessities occasionally outpace administrative authorization, particularly during transitional periods. The subtle remand are that certain fundamental processes transcended governance approval registered appropriately without becoming confrontational. Apollo's expression suggested recognition of reality constraints without conceding political position. Professional diplomatic response. I shall convey field observations to Olympus, he decided. Pending formal authorization, provisional communication channels may establish through Hestia's domain as neutral intermediary. The compromise offered reasonable balance between security protocols and practical necessity. Naruto accepted with appropriate acknowledgement of mutual constraints. Diplomatic foundation establishing despite unprecedented circumstances. As various parties prepared for departure, Apollo and Artemis to report observations, Hera to manage political positioning, and Hestia to arrange neutral communication channels, the hearth goddess approached Naruto with unexpected directness. Your approach represents fascinating integration of perspectives typically separated. She observed quietly. Human compassion tempers divine absolutism, creating balanced viewpoint rarely available to cosmic entities. My human life wasn't coincidental, was it? Naruto inquired, voicing realization emerging from increasingly integrated memory. The specific challenges, connections, and growth experiences served intentional purpose beyond mere temporary housing. Hestia's warm smile confirmed his suspicion. The dragon god's essence required perspective transformation before reunification. Theoretical understanding of mortal experience provides an eight foundation for balanced cosmic authority. So Naruto Uzumaki wasn't merely container but essential component of whatever I'm becoming, he concluded with relief rather than resentment. The mentioned that his human identity maintained fundamental importance rather than temporary utility, provided significant psychological stability during ongoing transformation. Precisely why your return offers hope rather than merely power. Hestia agreed. The universe requires balanced understanding alongside cosmic authority, combination previously unavailable through conventional divine development. Their conversation concluded with practical arrangements for subsequent communication, Hestia providing specific procedural information regarding hearth-facilitated contact methods. As the goddess prepared to depart, she offered one final observation. The flames remember their original kindler, though knowledge faded from administrative records. Your essence connects to fundamental cosmic principles regardless of political classification. The cryptic yet meaningful statement lingered as she dissolved into gentle flame, returning to her domain while maintaining subtle connection to the interdimensional portal. Her departure left Naruto contemplative before returning through dimensional opening to awaiting shinobi delegation. Crossing back into familiar dimension brought IATE sense memory of home despite newfound cosmic awareness. The shinobi world radiated unique energy signature, combination of natural vitality and concentrated chakra systems developed through generations of human cultivation. Tsunade awaited his return with professional composure masking evident relief. Initial contact assessment, she inquired, leadership responsibilities temporarily superseding personal concern. Complicated but provisionally positive, Naruto reported, summarizing interdimensional interaction while specialized teams stabilized the portal for controlled maintenance. IR governance structure maintains significant internal political divisions regarding appropriate response to dimensional convergence. Typical administrative complexity, she noted with experienced understanding. Formal versus informal power channels creating policy dissonance during unprecedented developments. The entity breach during dimensional stabilization suggests additional complications beyond diplomatic considerations. Shikamaru added, already documenting observed phenomena for analytical processing. Whatever attempted manifestation represented significant threat to both dimensions. Ancient enemies sealed during primordial conflicts, Naruto confirmed, accessing increasingly coherent memory fragments. Entities existing between realities, sealed beyond dimensional bounda. Rise to prevent consumption of manifested existence. They sense opportunity in transitional disruption. Yamato approached with technical update, would release maintaining secondary stabilization around dimensional portal. The gateway maintains structural integrity following interference suppression. Analysis suggests permanent dimensional thinning rather than temporary opening, the boundaries bet. Ween worlds demonstrably weakened beyond restoration to previous separation. Meaning interdimensional contact becomes inevitable regardless of diplomatic preference, Tsunade interpreted accurately. We establish controlled engagement protocols or face chaotic interaction without regulatory framework. Precisely the reasoning I conveyed to Olympian representatives, Naruto agreed. They've designated Hestia, their eldest deity with domain over hearth and home, as neutral intermediary for subsequent communication. Her position allows contact without immediately triggering hierarchical defense protocols. Intelligent diplomatic architecture, Shikamaru acknowledged. Utilizing existing power structures with appropriate procedural distancing from central authority. As conversation continued addressing practical implementation details, Naruto momentarily allowed consciousness to expand beyond immediate surroundings. Enhanced perception detected subtle but significant developments throughout both dimensions. Creatures previously isolated by cosmic barriers sensing renewed connection to original sovereign, dimensional boundaries thinning at geometrically increasing rate, and most concerningly, entities sealed beyond conventional reality testing barriers weakened through transitional disruption. The convergence proceeded with or without administrative authorization. Cosmic TEMS established during primordial organization reasserted fundamental patterns regardless of subsequent governance preferences. Dimensional separation originally implemented as temporary protective measure approached inevitable conclusion. Yet within this cosmic inevitability, specific manifestation details remain subject to conscious guidance. How reunification proceeded, through cooperative transition or chaotic disruption, depended partly on decisions made by representatives of affected realities. Naruto Uzumaki had spent human lifetime building connections through persistent optimism and unwavering loyalty. Ryujin had created cosmic balance through fundamental understanding of complementary opposition rather than destructive conflict. The integration of these perspectives offered unprecedented opportunity for harmonious transition rather than catastrophic realignment. We establish formal diplomatic protocols while preparing for inevitable complications, Naruto decided, golden eyes briefly reflecting draconic vertical pupils before returning to normal appearance. The veil between worlds thins regardless of preference. How we manage transition determines whether convergence proceeds through mutual benefit or universal disruption. His declaration received thoughtful consideration rather than immediate acceptance or rejection, respect for substantive content rather than hierarchical positioning or reflexive agreement. The response demonstrated fundamental strength within shinobi decision-making. Practical assessment trumped political positioning when facing existential developments. As specialized teams continued portal stabilization and monitoring, Naruto turned attention toward internal landscape where human and divine consciousness progressively integrated rather than competing for dominance. The balanced perspective emerging through this unprecedented unification might provide framework for larger cosmic transition approaching completion. The Dragon God awakened not as separate entity displacing human identity, but as expanded consciousness incorporating mortal understanding within divine awareness. The resulting perspective, compassionate authority, rather than abstract power, offered hope for balanced reunification beyond mere cosmic reconfiguration. Two worlds separated by necessity prepared for inevitable reunion, with bridges forming between dimensions in both physical and metaphorical sense. Whatever emerged through this convergence would reflect choices made during transition as much as cosmic inevitability underlying the process itself. The veil between worlds thinned inexorably, but how populations crossed that diminishing boundary remained subject to conscious guidance rather than chaotic inevitability. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.